Chapter 46. Forging. Sure enough, the formal trial was unlike the newbie trial. Though it was difficult, in the first level of the trial, the first group of stone soldiers had killed Yuanxi 300 times. But Yuanxi had also obtained equal rewards from them. Yuanxi only obtained the hippo's soul from the green hippo. However, besides the stone soldier souls, the stone soldier army Yuanxi killed also provided him 4 spoils. 3 of the spoils made Yuanxi feel the importance of weapons and the equipment Yuanxi obtained in the formal trial. The 2 crane swords. They were 2 famous swords owned by the second child of the Yuanhe family and forged by the 17th successor of god craftsman Oyezi. They were 2 swords specially made for supporting the Yuanhe sword skill. They had the property that could be thrown out to attack enemies by itself and then fly back to its master. The Yuanhe sword skill. Yuanxi couldn't stop himself from remembering the several people who were living in the highest bamboo houses in the small town. Child Yuanhe was one of them. The next was the 2-handed sword that the number 2 stone soldier used. It was a standard 2-handed sword of the Thunder Army in the Western Gods' domains, the walking sword of Child Xinyan, and was made by the Western God Artisans Guild. It was 108 kilograms, and only a person with superhuman strength could use it. It could even be used as a siege weapon. The last one was the weirdest sword, which brought Yuanxi the biggest trouble. Snake Bone Soft Sword. It was the heritage spirit weapon of the White Lotus Sword Domain's Snake Bones family. It was held by the current child Snake Bones, and no one knew who its maker was. People only knew that it was probably forged from some hero-rank spirit snake's remnant parts. It was specially made for supporting the Snake Bone sword skill. After reaching the hero rank, its user could summon the shadow of the spirit snake out of the sword to fight for him. Spirit weapon. It was the first spirit weapon Yuanxi obtained. Mortals couldn't display the true power of weapons at this level. They could only use them as the best mortal rank weapons. No wonder Child Snake Bones' attacks were so weird. The Snake Bone Soft Sword was a true spirit weapon. It was a great waste to be used by a mortal, but I can't use them at all. Looking at the spoils he obtained in his first formal trial, Yuanxi was a little annoyed. No matter if it was the 2 crane swords or Snake Bone Soft Sword, they were all specially made for supporting sword skills. Especially the Snake Bone Soft Sword. It needed a special bloodline to match with it. In that case, Yuanxi couldn't even use it. Now, Yuanxi could only use the standard 2-handed sword of the Thunder Army from the Western Gods' domain. However, Yuanxi's power was from Huahua's seed. His strongest sword skill was the lightweight and flexible Flying Swallow sword. It wasn't something that matched with the Super Giant sword, which weighed 108 kilograms. Yuanxi twisted the corner of his mouth slightly after he imagined his slender Hua while waving the 2-handed giant sword to attack someone. No, he couldn't use them. After picking and choosing, Yuanxi found that now, the newbie iron sword was still the optimal choice for him. Fortunately, the 4th spoil gave Yuanxi a hint that even though these weapons didn't fit him, they could still offer him their power. The last spoils were 10 small crystals that emitted teeny green lights. These fragments of green crystals were the essence of weapon enhancement. They could be used to forge and enhance low-level weapons. The fragments could be obtained after randomly defeating enemies or by disassembling low-level weapons. Disassemble them. Yuanxi decided to disassemble the Snake Bone Soft Sword and the Flying 2 Crane Swords, leaving only the 2-handed Giant Sword, because he thought that maybe he could use it. The method to disassembling weapons was simple. He had only to throw the weapon he couldn't use into the campfire. Ding! After a while, dozens of the fragments of green crystals flew out from the campfire and fell into Yuanxi's hands. Well, the 2 crane swords gave me 4 fragments. The Snake Bone Soft Sword is worthy of being called a spirit weapon. It gave me 31 fragments. After counting out all the fragments of green crystals he had, Yuanxi moved his eyes to the 4 pieces of equipment in his armory. The newbie iron sword, the newbie cloth armor, the newbie wooden shield, and the standard 2-handed sword of the Thunder Army from the Western Gods' domain. At first glance, it would be best to use all the fragments of green crystals to forge and enhance the last spoil, because it could improve his combat capabilities immediately. The problem was that the strongest choice was not always the optimal choice. After hesitating for a while, Yuanxi chose the newbie iron sword, because it was the most suitable one for him. Up to now, He had the highest proficiency with the newbie iron sword among all the weapons he had used. He decided to change for a better sword after obtaining more spoils after the trial. As for the uncommon standard two-handed sword of the Thunder Army, oh, maybe he could learn how to use it in the future. Enhance the newbie iron sword. After putting the newbie iron sword in front of the campfire, Yuanxi sent out the enhancing order. 3 green crystals immediately turned into ashes and began to enhance the newbie iron sword for the first time. The green light points infiltrated the newbie iron sword and engraved new grooves on the common newbie iron sword. Every groove would use 3 green crystals. After using up 9 green crystals, the newbie iron sword had 3 beautiful ancient-style grooves on it, which made it look better. However, the green crystals gave no response at all after that. Could it only be enhanced 3 times? Yuanxi knew that this was the newbie iron sword's limit. It was limited by its material quality and couldn't be engraved with any more grooves in it. To be honest, even the 3 grooves had surprised Yuanxi. He didn't know how it was made. It was a superlative craftsmanship. After enhancing 3 times, it didn't change anything, no matter its center of gravity or quality of balance. However, its material quality and sharpness had been improved to a higher level. Perhaps the newbie iron sword couldn't compare to the two-handed sword of Thunder Army now, but it was already a fine sword. It could at least be regarded as a top-grade weapon among all mortal weapons, especially when it had the special property, Never Wear, which was the only property of the newbie weapon. Well then, it's your turn now. After successfully enhancing the newbie iron sword, Yuanxi enhanced the newbie cloth armor and the newbie wooden shield to their limit without hesitation. As the same as the newbie iron sword, the enhancing limit of the newbie cloth armor and the newbie wooden shield was 3 times. However, the cloth armor needed 3 times more green crystals than the iron sword, which meant that it used 9 fragments of green crystals to engrave a single groove. After that, Yuanxi had used all the fragments of green crystals he obtained in the first level. However, the expensive enhancement brought Yuanxi power. After putting the 3 pieces of newbie equipment on his body, Yuanxi could clearly feel the power the pieces of equipment brought him. Chapter 47. Lancers. The first was the newbie iron sword. The iron sword was the weapon Yuanxi was most comfortable with, and now it was brand new, shining cold light from its sword handle to the point of the blade. Undoubtedly, its weight and center didn't change, but it was more comfortable and flexible to hold it in his hands. If there was a specific way to describe it, the newbie sword has enhanced Yuanxi's combat power by over 150%. The next was the newbie cloth armor. After engraving 3 grooves on it, it supported Yuanxi by defending his vulnerable body parts better. At least, he wouldn't be cut so easily again. As for the last one, the newbie wooden shield, it improved in stability and anti-impactability, which also meant that Yuanxi needed to master higher skills to use it. After experiencing violent battles, wandering between death and life, Yuanxi was keenly aware of the importance of good weapons and equipment on the battlefield. If he had these 3 pieces of equipment at that time, perhaps he would only to die 100 times and would pass through the first test perfectly. This was also the reason as to why he enhanced all his equipment without any hesitation after getting the fragments of green crystal. Because of the horror of death, it made him feel the value of life more clearly. Humans shouldn't get used to death. Yuanxi didn't become numb to the frequent deaths, but only valued his own life more carefully. He knew that people died if they were killed. In the real world, there was no bonfire that could revive him without limit. My strength improved by about 10%? At the end of the first stage of the trial, Yuanxi absorbed all the souls of the Stone Soldier army. The souls of every single Stone Soldier only offered Yuanxi a few improvements. Even after he had absorbed the last 3 Stone Soldier souls, they couldn't match up with the Green Hippo's soul at all. The energy in the souls of the Stone Soldier army was more than the energy of the Green Hippo's soul about 1.5 times. But to kill them was far more difficult than to kill the Green Hippo. Yuanxi even missed the stupid Green Hippo a little from the newbie trial. The Green Hippo's soul let Yuanxi become a first-rank swordsman, and the Green Hippo's seed let Yuanxi level up to second rank after his limit practice. Well, though the hippo was supposed to be killed, but it would be regarded as a pretty good novice package. It would be better if Ashen summoned more hippos at that time. The next step is to choose the route. Standing in the empty palace, Yunshi looked at the doors leading to two different areas. Behind the two doors, there were wide bridges, and both bridges had several stone soldiers wandering on them. The door on the left led to the volcanic area, where gathered countless flames. It was the location of the young heroine who was going to fight the evil dragon. The door on the right led to the great tower. At the end of the coastline waited the imprisoned princess. Now, Yunshi had to make his choice. Should he do the branch quest first, meeting with his childhood sweetheart and fighting against the evil dragon in the volcanic area with her? Or directly finish the main quest, going to the great tower to save the princess of the twin witches? By the way, do they really need my help? Yunshi stood in the middle of the fork with a helpless expression on his face. The road to the left led to his childhood sweetheart Hua Hua. His strongest ability was obtained from her seed. Did such an awesome childhood sweetheart really need him to fight side by side with her? The road to the right led to the twin witches, Red Lotus and White Lotus. Hey. Was there anyone in the town able to imprison you? You are too hero-ranked, strong people who could even fly. Thinking about it, Yunshi felt that the world was so ridiculous. Sure enough, I should go meet with Hua Hua. Though in the hot spring White Lotus showed her love to him, but in Yunshi's heart, Hua Hua was the most important one. After all, they were childhood sweethearts who lived together for 10 years. Besides, she was also his first love. He knew her quite well. Since he had made the decision, Yunshi didn't hesitate anymore. He directly rushed out of the palace. Kala. In the hallway, a stone soldier holding a lance in its hand leaped into the air. It brandished its lance and locked on Yunshi's position. Third rank. It was a strong stone soldier at the third rank. Was its class Lancer? The attack of a third rank was far more powerful than the attack of a second rank. Anyone who was at the third rank was certain to have mastered a method to improve his power and could break out with a power that mortals could never imagine. They were the strongest presences amongst all mortals. Each one of them could be regarded as a valiant general who could fight one against thousands of enemies. Ding! The wooden shield he had just enhanced played a role at this crucial moment. It helped Yunshi block the mortal blow from the sky. Quicksilver motion and flying swallow sword. Combat instinct waking up immediately, Yunshi struck back. Chi. The sharp lance danced like a violent storm in the air, breaking through Yunshi's flying swallow sword from the center and thrusting into Yunshi's chest. The enhanced newbie cloth armor worked again. It helped Yunshi block the unknown third-rank strong person's thrust. Cough. Yunshi vomited out blood from his mouth as he quickly stepped back. The enemy was too strong. He was more powerful than the third-rank enemies Yunshi met before. Even the green hippo wasn't at the same level with him. He was apparently a veteran of many wars. His lance never drew back. He was really a violent general-like man. And his lance skill was also a military style. It had no extra skills except the killing techniques themselves. He didn't give Yunshi the chance to adjust himself. After the thrusting, the violent general-like man swept Yunshi to the sky with his shield. Too bad. I lost my balance. Yunshi heard harsh howling. It was the fatal announcement of death. Just fight. Yunshi threw away the newbie wooden shield. He struck an unnatural pose and brandished his sword 9 times in the air. It was the secret sword skill he used to kill the owner of the snake bone soft sword. A skill that could only be used after mastering flying swallow skill, killing his enemy by brandishing his sword 9 times from different angles and directions. With a surprised voice, the lance struck back 9 times on the 9 sword waves, breaking Yunshi's unique skill from the center again. He was too strong. What to do? Yunshi turned around in the air, standing on the stone pillar of the bridge. For the first time, he looked his opponent up and down. Yunshi surprisingly found that he wasn't a child of a noble family, but a real general wearing military armor. He even knew the general very well. When he was still young, the general and his army had passed by the small town more than once. Why is it him? Yunshi was dumbfounded. After all, he was a former general of the White Lotus Sword Domain, an army chief who had the title as Battle Deity. When he was young, the general was the idol of many boys in the town, and was the only third-rank person who emerged from the small town. As far as Yunxi knew, he was over 40 years old this year. Chapter 48. The Five Great Generals. So, the trial didn't only pull the young childs of the noble families in here, but older people were in its selected ranges as well. Yunxi remembered that when he was young, a battle deity was a big deal. Not only him. There were also other generals who passed by the small town, sometimes when they led their troops to go on patrol. They were called the Five Tiger Generals and were seen as great heroes. When didn't the young boys and girls in the town regard themselves as their heroes? Well, Yunxi remembered what happened after Huahua dueled them. In the duel, Huahua beat the five people down at the same time. After that, Huahua replaced the position of the five generals, becoming the unquestionable number one in the hearts of all the young boys and girls in town. He remembered that the invitation of White Lotus Sword Palace was also sent to her at that time. Since a genuine battle deity was here, Yunxi had a hunch that the several big and tall stone soldiers behind him were. Yunxi raised his head up, looking at the several familiar faces. They looked like they were cut from the same mold. They all had strong muscles, big and tall bodies, finely tempered, fine steel lances, and looked like five standard lancers. Yes, they were the famous five tiger generals in the mortal army of the White Lotus Sword Domain, the successors of the ruinous Star Sect, which was located in the Sword Blade region of the domain. It was said they were five cousins: Zhao Ming, Zhao Xiong, Zhao Chu, Zhao Chue, and Zhao Shun. These were the five tiger generals' names, and the true name of the general battle deity was Zhao Xiong. However, many people thought the five generals looked like they were cut from the same mold. No matter if it was their powerful muscles or frightening faces, it made everyone refuse to believe that they were not brothers. The reason people called them the Five Tiger Generals was because their faces were too alike. General Zhao Xiong. Yunxi adjusted his breath. This was the first time he would fight against a general who was so powerful that he alone could replace 1,000 normal enemies. Yunxi felt a little nervous. No matter if it were battle skills, attack power, or fighting abilities, the green hippo who had only brute force couldn't be compared to General Zhao Xiong. Even if he ignored other factors, his simple, sweep-away skill had already forced Yunxi into a desperate situation. However, Huahua's seed sent him a strange piece of information. It seemed to be trying to tell Yunxi that general battle deity Zhao Xiong wasn't unbeatable. At that time, when Huahua put herself against the five tiger generals and defeated them one by one, she wasn't at the third rank, but at the second rank, the same as Yunxi. Is this true? If Yunxi didn't obtain Huahua's seed, he would never have figured out that the five generals, who were also known as the five military strategists, had the same weakness. Well, it should be here. Yunxi looked around, then skillfully dashed towards General Zhao Xiong. Oh, General Zhao Xiong looked pretty excited. In the dream, he seemed to have returned to the most important battle in his life. At that day, his opponent was also so tiny and nimble, it seemed as if he could easily beat her down by a sudden strike. However, in the end, the battle ended with his crushing defeat. Not only him, but his four brothers, Zhao Ming, Zhao Chu, Zhao Chue, and Zhao Shun, were all defeated by the little girl's sword. That was the first time he realized how wide the gap was among geniuses and ordinary people, and that battle also became the turning point of his life. After being defeated by the sword skill of the genius girl, he finally realized the limit of his talent. He understood that he probably couldn't step on the road of the hero rank during his lifetime. Then, he gave up. He followed his family's arrangement, marrying a wife and having a son. Now, his children were already old enough to hold a lance. Perhaps that was the limit of his life. He had been pinning all his hopes on his children. Now, his son had succeeded his blood. Though his son could only practice with a wooden lance now, but his lance skill already looked like his father's and would definitely surpass him. However, sometimes, when he woke up from a dream, he couldn't stop himself from imagining what would have happened if he had won that duel. He thought he wasn't the only one who thought so. His brothers, who also had gotten married and had children, would also imagine that battle. Zhao Ming, Zhao Xiong, Zhao Chu, Zhao Chue, and Zhao Shun, they were called the Five Tiger Generals. They must have cared about that duel too much, so they had this dream together. The opponent in their dream wasn't a girl. However, his sword skill and battle style looked exactly like the genius girl they remembered. What a wonderful dream! After that battle, they had reflected on it countless times. They practiced their lance skills, thinking about the mistakes they made in the battle over and over again. Now, they finally had the opportunity to fight again in the dream. Hee-ha! Zhao Xiong shouted. The lance he held rotated, drawing a circle in the air. He dashed towards Yunxi. This was it. This was the feeling. The feeling that, though his strength and attacks held the advantage, his heart still beat heavily. Kid, try your best. Let's start a jolly and hearty fight. One-on-one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yunxi took a few nimble steps, shielding the heavy lance arc by using his sword. Then, he showed his back to General Zhao Xiong, exposing his weakness on purpose. At the moment Yunxi showed him his back, General Zhao Xiong's eyes suddenly turned red. His steel lance rotated like a drilling bit, starting his fatal violent lunge toward Yunxi. Here it is 5, 6. Yunxi rolled over, which almost was at the extreme limit of the human body, and then jumped up on the edge of the bridge. Boom! General Zhao Xiong's lance furiously broke through the balustrade of the bridge. Then, he dropped down into the green water under the bridge without hesitation. Plop! With a loud noise, the water splashed 10 meters high. After about dozens of seconds, a ball of green soul of the stone soldier flew to Yunxi. So that's true. Yunxi stood on the position General Zhao Xiong dashed down from on the bridge, looking at the traces caused by the severe friction. For a moment, he was stunned. The 5 Tiger Generals were the successors of military strategists. They were experts in charging and breaking enemy positions by using their skilled lance skills, and they had a strong compulsion to attack when their opponents exposed their weakness. He could defeat them by using this tactic, making them have an error in judgment. This was the tactic Yunxi learned from Huahua's seed. It seemed that, though Huahua's sword had beat them down, they still couldn't remove this weakness of theirs, their compulsion to attack a perceived weakness. I see. So, Yunxi understood how to win against the 5 generals. They were too impetuous and especially had an unintelligible compulsion to attack weaknesses. He picked up the wooden shield, bravely walking towards the area where the remaining 4 generals guarded. Plop, 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 plop. Chapter 49. Mighty Dragon, how can it be so simple? By using the same method, Yunxi trapped Zhao Ming, Zhao Xiong, Zhao Chu, Zhao Chue, and Zhao Shun beside the bridge. He felt the number of the souls he absorbed and felt pretty confused. Weren't they 5 real third-rank warriors? Compared to the stone army he met at the first stage, why were the famous 5 Tiger Generals so easy to deal with? Were they too weak? No. Their attacking power and explosive force were both at the 3rd rank. If they fought recklessly with Yunxi one-on-one, they could even suppress Yunxi from all directions. If it wasn't because they had the same fatal weakness, Yunxi would have had to pay a great price to win against any of them. Maybe he would even have had to perish together with them. Huahua, what a genius you are. Every time Yunxi thought that he had overestimated Huahua's talent, Huahua's seed would tell him that he was at a way lower level than Huahua. When Huahua was still at the 2nd rank, the 5 Tiger Generals' actions were full of weak points. Though they were at the 3rd rank, they were still merely 5 stronger boorish fellows in Huahua's mind. However, in the eyes of the townspeople, even in the eyes of the people of White Lotus Sword Domain, they all were invincible generals. 99% perspiration was more important than 1% inspiration? That was just a story adults used to cheat children. 1% inspiration was way more important than 99% perspiration. People who had no inspiration would finally reach their limit. In this world, only a genius who also practiced hard could reach the zenith, just like Huahua. Does Huahua really need my help? Feeling the increased strength in his body, Yunxi figured out the degree in which he had improved. The souls of the 5 Tiger Generals were about 2 times more than the soul of the Green Hippo. What a great example the Green Hippo was. He decided that if he saw these kind of green hippos again, he would kill them as much as possible. Boom! A volcano erupted in front of Yunxi. Countless amounts of magma soared to the sky. For a moment, the dust and smoke rose from the volcanic vent and flew 10,000s of meters in the sky. Observing it from the ground, a small half of the sky was almost covered. Hua, what are you fighting with? Looking at the exploding volcano, Yunshi was stunned for a long while. By using quicksilver motion, Yunshi turned into the wind, dashing to the central part of the burning volcano area. Along the way, Yunshi saw many bodies in separated parts. Every corpse was a strange beast, the beasts the people who just reached the small town owned. There were about 6 dead green hippos, about 6 dead white flying horses, a dead griffin, a dead King Kong. They all were giants or strange beasts. They were treasures belonging to the people in the town, some of them handed down by their owners' ancestors. Many strange beasts could live very long, way longer than humans. Training a baby beast from birth, by the time of its death, it could have even protected a family for dozen generations. In that case, how many strange beasts a big family had, and how powerful their strange beasts were, directly showed how strong that family was. Ordinary people didn't have enough money and time to feed these fierce and strong beasts. However, those powerful strange beasts were all lying down in a pool of their own blood. Especially the several green hippos, Yunshi gazed at them with greed. Because they weren't killed by Yunshi, he obtained no souls from their corpses. He had to look at these carcasses messed up on the ground. Not one of them was alive. It seemed that, when Yunshi was struggling hard to fight with the stone soldier army, Hua had cleared her way by killing, entering the last battle. Yunshi even doubted himself. When he reached that place, would the side quest have already been completed by Hua? Erf! A heaven-shaking roar told Yunshi that the last battle hadn't finished yet. Side quest. The heroine challenging the evil dragon. Go find her and become her partner. Defeat the evil dragon. After remembering the hint of the side quest, Yunshi knew what the strongest monster in the volcano area was. A dragon. No matter where you were, the Western God's domain or dragon's domain. A dragon meant absolute power, the master of dominant power. Dragon, even a worm, which had only a few drops of dragon blood, was the top hunter who stood at the peak of the food chain. As the side quest specially pointed out that it was an evil dragon, Yunshi couldn't imagine what kind of a vicious monster it was. Was Hua fighting with such a monster? After dodging balls of flame continuously and stepping on fire and dust, Yunshi finally reached the central location of the volcano area and saw 2 presences who were fighting. Dragon. It wasn't an earth dragon, wyvern, nor 8 Varus. It was a real male fiery dragon who had red-hot scales and was roaring. How was it possible that such a monster appeared near the small town? Wasn't it a nightmare which only inhabited volcanic areas? Male fiery dragon. It had terrible blood that could make it become a true giant dragon. It was a true dragon. It was about 18 meters in length, and its scales looked rough and crimson. You could vaguely see dark red striations on its wings. Even as he was still a few hundred meters away from it, he could feel its horrible atmosphere, which was known as dragon's dignity. A male fiery dragon. It was a real male fiery dragon. If male fiery dragons were immersed long enough in magma, it could evolve into a giant dragon who could control flames. Its wide wings, hard scales, and strong 4 limbs all proved that it could tear any mortal in 2 pieces. No matter if it were the green hippo, the King Kong, or the white flying horse, they could not be compared to the fiery dragon who owned the blood of a fire-type giant dragon. The fiery dragon was a real hero-rank being. It was a super creature who could control flames and had dragon's dignity. However, what was it Yunshi saw now? The atrocious fiery dragon, who was so strong that it could swim in magma, had one of its wings cut off and only half of its tail remained. Its body was covered with scars. Hua, who was just at the 3rd rank, had driven the giant monster into the last ditch. This wasn't something like a 2nd rank fighting against a 3rd rank, but a mortal doing serious damage to a hero rank monster. Chapter 50. Dragon Battle Maiden that was too powerful. Yunshi blankly looked at the both sides that were fighting each other violently, feeling Hua was powerful talent again. No, it already couldn't be described as powerful. It was incredible. Everyone in every god's domain admitted that a mortal rank couldn't defeat a hero rank. Mortal's 3rd rank of white leaf meant the limit of flesh and blood. Even inhuman monsters like the green hippo were still at this rank. Only hero rank of Silverleaf were entitled to step in a higher realm. You could say that in essence, mortal rank creatures and hero rank creatures were already two different living beings. Taking the male fiery dragon and the green hippo as an example, an adult male fiery dragon could easily spit out flame at thousands of degrees, and his dragon aura field could shock and awe all creatures under the third rank. If this kind of monsters appeared on the battlefield of mortals, it wasn't as simple as an invincible enemy, but a nightmare who was going to exterminate all living beings. Third rank and 4RD rank. Mortals and heroes. This was a natural chasm. Ding! The cold sword light pierced the air, chopping at the angry male fiery dragon again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yuanxi exhausted his sight, finally barely seeing traces of Hua's sword clearly. It was the flying swallow sword, but way stronger than the common flying swallow sword. Yuanxi had to force all his strength to use the flying swallow's six-fold attack, but any of Hua's casual attacks easily reached 14 slashes. Not only that, they were all forced on one limb. There was no deviation. Hong! The male fiery dragon trampled the ground. All its scales suddenly emitted light, and then a wall of fire shot up to the sky. The human mortal body certainly couldn't master this kind of ability. Flame control was a proof that the male fiery dragon was at hero rank. However, the wall of fire couldn't even ignite the corner of Hua's clothes. Hua stepped forward. Comparing to her use of the skill Quicksilver Motion, Yuanxi blushingly felt that he himself was nothing. A moment later, she appeared behind the male fiery dragon. This time, it was her 24 times continuous attacks that were at lightning speed, and the position she chopped on was the male fiery dragon's tail, which was already a little broken. Roared, the angry male fiery dragon used its ultimate skill, which could kill all creatures whose rank was lower than third rank, Dragon's Roar. Terrible sound waves spread away. Even Yuanxi, who was hundreds of meters away from there, was also involved in the skill. His eardrums nearly broke. Hua flexibly brandished her sword, drawing traces in the air in a way that Yuanxi was unable to understand, cutting and splitting the male fiery dragon from all directions. Who? The dragon's roar, which was able to kill the 5 tiger generals at the same moment, just blew up a gust of wind, making her pretty horsetail flap in the air. After breaking the dragon's roar down, Hua took a backward step and then jumped up in the next second. Gahu! The male fiery dragon saw that Hua was jumping up, then its next actions made Yuanxi feel inconceivable. Holding claws, protecting its eyes and head. Its body curled up with wings folded. Looked that it was very proficient. Hua jumped up. She dragged her simple long sword, stroking her fingertip on the blade of the sword. Then, she dropped a few blood drops down on the sharp blade, adding the light, long sword a few blood-red color. The next moment, with a flash, a line in the air appeared in front of Yuanxi's eyes. The male fiery dragon roared sadly and shrilly as one of its wings was chopped off from the middle. It was Sky-Flying Sword. It was Yuanxi's first time seeing Hua's strongest sword skill, God Sword skill, with his own eyes. Only this kind of sword skill could chop off the defiant male fiery dragon's wing with one hit. After all, if it was Yuanxi, his attack couldn't do any harm to the dragon's scales. By analogy, half of the dragon's tail and its wing on the other side were also chopped off by Hua's God Sword skill. No wonder that it was Hua's strongest hidden sword skill. It could even chop off the hero-rank dragon's wings and tail. However, after using this skill, Hua did not look happy at all. She didn't keep fighting with the male fiery dragon. Using her skill Quicksilver Motion continuously, she ran to a corner in the middle of the volcano area. Then, she took out a black stone to sharpen her sword. Her sword was turned. The weapon was lacking sharpness. When Yuanxi fought with the green hippo, he was also facing this trouble, so he understood Hua's action immediately. The male fiery dragon's scales were too hard. Even though Hua's sword was made of stainless steel, an excellent weapon from White Lotus Sword Palace, but it was still not good enough to cut through dragon scales. Perhaps that was the only reason that Hua hadn't killed the male fiery dragon yet. Her weapon wasn't sharp enough. If so, maybe. Yuanxi checked his armory, finding a weapon which he regarded as a waste before. The standard two-handed sword of the Thunderbolt army in the Western God's domain. Its weight 108 kilograms. It could be used as a siege weapon. Hua, use it. She took out the sword, which was too heavy for mortals, and threw it to Hua. Ah, little Shi, you're here. Hua looked at Shi in surprise and happiness. She hurriedly stood up, tidying her little burnt dress. Because she had fought with the male fiery dragon for a long while, her clothes had been burnt a little apart. However, none of the parts were burned by the male fiery dragon's flames. It was burnt due to the igneous magma. Don't look at me, little Shi. After realizing how embarrassing her dress was, Hua's face turned red. You stupid dragon, it's all your fault. Gahu. The male fiery dragon didn't think so. It was just staying in the volcano, but Hua came to it, chopping off its wings and tail. The male fiery dragon stared at them with tears welled up. Did I bother you? I just ate several humans. Why must you chase after me till my nest? Hua, sword. She never saw Hua use two-handed swords, but he thought that Hua should know how to use it. Oh, you're coming to give me a weapon. Not bad, this dream. Hua looked very happy to see the two-handed sword which she threw to the ground. I needed this kind of weapon. In that case, this stupid dragon is just dead meat. Woohoo! Though it didn't understand what Hua was saying, the male fiery dragon still noticed the two-handed sword that she threw to Hua. Suddenly, it shivered. The next moment, she saw the 3 steps that Hua used to kill the male fiery dragon. The first step, Hua moved to the heavy sword, picking it up by using only one hand. The second step, Hua jumped up. The blood that slipped from her fingers stained the heavy sword, which was able to kill the dragon. The third step, a giant V crack appeared in the air. It tore the male fiery dragon into 2 pieces. That was how the heroine killed the evil dragon. Chapter 51. Sky Sword, Tianxiang Sword, Hong. The male fiery dragon's mountain-like huge body toppled down on the ground. Its 4 limbs twisted and struggled, and its dragon's roar shook the earth. Shi was caught off guard. The afterwind of the dragon's roar blew him to the sky. How dare you? At first, Hua was going to kill the male fiery dragon without pain, but now, her anger flared up. The two-handed sword, which was made by the Thunder Army in the Western God's domain, was stained with Hua's blood again. 1 hit, 2 hits. Shi hadn't landed on the ground, but saw one sword lights after another take off towards the male fiery dragon. Every sword light was as nimble as a bird flying in the sky. Every sword light was as heavy as a meteorite hitting the ground. Extremely heavy and extremely light. 2 different properties perfectly blended together on Hua's sword. Breaking its claws, docking its tail, chopping its wings, cutting its bones and mincing its flesh. When faced with Hua's godlike sword skill, the male fiery dragon, who arrogantly detonated the volcano, was meat on a chopping board. He was completely minced. Swish! As the last action, Hua threw the two-handed sword to the sky, then continuously used quicksilver motion for 3 times, which was so fast that you may wonder if her ankles would break. She rushed below Shi, then leaped up, holding Shi in her arms in the air. A perfect pose of hero saving the princess. However, Shi wasn't the hero. He was the princess who was saved. Chi. The two-handed sword dropped down, directly sticking the male fiery dragon's head, pinning the scarred giant monster on the ground. The evil dragon was killed. Little Shi, don't come to such a dangerous place. I'm happy to take the sword you gave me, but this big one was a little too powerful for you. Though she said that, her face was full of happiness. Even Shi could clearly see it. A little powerful. Shi dumbly looked at the male fiery dragon, who was sliced and diced but still giving off an appalling sense of pressure. It was a hero-rank monster, known as a nightmare who had the power to eliminate a whole army. Before today, he saw Hua using her god sword skill, Sky Flying Sword, beginner. Shi had made many guesses about what was the god sword skill. However, Even his wildest guess was still pale and weak if compared to Hua's record of killing the male fiery dragon. The power of God's sword skill, sky-flying sword, was way beyond Yuanxi's understanding, and it was also beyond the common sense of the people of Sky Sword God's domain. As a third-rank sword maiden, she could kill the hero-rank male fiery dragon as easily as if it were an ant. That was how terrible and powerful the sky-flying sword was. Yuanxi had never heard of such a sword skill. Jumping down from Hua's arms, Yuanxi walked to the male fiery dragon's corpse, which still retained the temperature of the flames. He aimed at the area where the defense was most weak, the connection part between the wing and body. 9 sword lights burst out together, which meant that Yuanxi had completely mastered the strongest skill from Hua's seed, Flying Swallow Sword. Hiss! Though the newbie iron sword had been enhanced for 3 times, it only made a screeching sound on the male fiery dragon's patagium and only made several light scratches on it. After a few seconds, the scratches also disappeared. What? After trying it himself, Yuanxi really understood how terrible a hero-rank being could be. It was the weakest part of the dragon. Besides, after being killed by Hua, the male fiery dragon's corpse had lost the support from its blood and energy. If the male fiery dragon was still alive and had its blood and energy as support, even if Yuanxi attacked it all day, he probably couldn't deal any damage to it. Yuanxi's ultimate attack could hurt a third-rank swordsman, but couldn't even damage the male fiery dragon's weakest spot. That was the difference between the mortal rank and the hero rank. When faced with a monster like the male fiery dragon, mortals, even if it was an army of 100,000, were just a number. As the being who had hero rank power, it could kill mortals as though it was crushing ants. Hua, you're too strong. The more he knew Hua, the more Yuanxi found how unusual his childhood sweetheart was. She couldn't belong to this common small town. As a girl who knew how to use the god sword skill, sky-flying sword, she could even ignore the difference between the hero rank and the mortal rank to kill the male fiery dragon. If this was a story from the Western God's domain, she definitely had the talent as a hero. That was not much. As hearing Yuanxi's praise, Hua blushed, seeming a little sheepish. It was just a male fiery dragon. If it was a female fiery dragon, it would be big trouble. However, the male fiery dragon was moving alone. It shouldn't have a spouse. So, I used it to practice my sword skill after I found it. I knew. You were so brilliant like the stars or the wide ocean. Your smile was so bright, just like the sun. You were my most excellent childhood sweetheart. Yuanxi raised his head up, gazing at Hua. Always, he knew that Hua was a genius, a sword genius who was far better than all the people in the town. Now, he would correct it. Hua wasn't only a genius on sword skill. She was also a genius on battles. With the passage of time, she would naturally emit more bright light, leaving every contemporary behind her. Yuanxi, thank you, comparing to her behavior when she was killing the male fiery dragon. Under Yuanxi's gaze, Hua looked pretty rattled. Yuanxi saw her unladylike behavior, but she had no choice. Though it was just a male fiery dragon, but her weapon was too subpar. In order to kill it, she had to use the sky-flying sword. Would Yuanxi think that she was too violent? Because, in the past, she always left him the expression as a cheerful and lively sword girl. However, she broke the male fiery dragon's claws, head, wings, and tail, and finally sliced and minced it. It did make her a little unlike a lady. Oh, that was all the stupid dragon's fault. Hua pouted, kicking on the male fiery dragon's head, though it had already totally died. Hua! Yuanxi looked at his childhood sweetheart, with many ideas passing in his heart. Yuanxi? Hua lowered her head and peeped at Yuanxi. For a moment, 2 people fell into a weird silence, until Yuanxi heard the ethereal and antique voice of stars suddenly appearing beside his ears. Side quest completed. Please receive your reward. Then, a transparent line, which Yuanxi looked pretty familiar with, suddenly appeared between Hua and himself, linking the 2 people together. Inside of Yuanxi's body, Hua's seed started to grow fast again. Not only so, the completion degree of Hua's seed started to drop sharply. 31%, 27%, 15%? As Yunxi looked at it incredulously, the completion degree of Huahua's seed dropped to 1%. Chapter 52. Huahua joins the team. It wasn't because the skills Yunxi obtained from Huahua were decreasing. Quite the opposite, there was more information flowing from Huahua to Yunxi's body, expanding the limit of the seed. Quicksilver motion, perfect. Flying swallow sword, perfect. Sky flying sword, beginner, 10% done. When he obtained the seed from Huahua, the information about this part were all hidden and missed, but now, they all opened to Yunxi. After stepping into the second rank and finishing the side quest, help the girl defeat the evil dragon. Not only did the closeness degree between Yunxi and Huahua increase, but it also let him obtain more benefits from Huahua. As the completion degree of the seed dropped from 33% to 1%, that also meant that the information Yunxi obtained from Huahua was increasing to a new realm. Even the sky-flying sword, which Huahua used to kill the male fiery dragon, also showed its truths to Yunxi for the first time. Though it had only been analyzed by less than 10%, but as a terrible god sword skill, it had opened a door leading to a new realm for Yunxi. This time, the seed expanded 10 times. The most data was about god sword skill, which Yunxi greatly desired, and was also the most important part. Quicksilver motion, perfect, and flying swallow sword, perfect, were the precondition to study sky flying sword. As long as Yunxi followed the steps recorded in Huahua's seed, to practice the two secret skills to their limits, he would touch the door leading to god sword skill. Yunxi even saw a mark in Huahua's seed, which he never saw before. It was an area which Yunxi couldn't understand now. Huahua, who the hell are you? After the seed updated its data, Yunxi felt that his childhood sweetheart became more and more mysterious. She was like an inexhaustible treasury. Every time he learned something new from the seed, he would then find that more unknown knowledge was hiding in the original seed. If Yunxi didn't have high affinity with the original seed, he would probably never guess what wonderful talent and sword skill his childhood sweetheart owned. Perhaps choosing her seed in the newbie trial was the best choice Yunxi had made. Yunxi, is there anything on my face? As Huahua curiously looked at Yunxi, she didn't know that Yunxi had found her secret. As a god sword skill, sky-flying sword wasn't a skill that everyone could see through. It was a topmost legacy from a faraway god's domain, even better than the Twin Witches' legacy. Of course, the Twin Witches also had phenomenal talent. They were already beyond the White Lotus Sword domain's witch's legacy. Even in the Western gods' domains, they were still very famous. No, Huahua, we meet again. Yunxi pretended that he knew nothing. How could he tell her the truth? He couldn't tell her that he had her seed and had seen a lot of secrets from it. If things kept going on like this, would the seed forever link Huahua and me together? No matter how long the distance between us was, would we always share this special relationship? The stars, what is in your mind? Wasn't the seed system too strange? If the seed's completion degree went to 100%, what would happen? Great. Tonight's dream is really a good dream. It's too lucky to meet a monster who could be used to practice my skills on. Besides, Yunxi was slaying the dragon together with me. Huahua smiled so much that her eyes almost narrowed shut as her horse tail swung in the air. However, little she, this is just a dream. In the real world, I won't be so violent to cut the dragon into pieces, and I'm only good at using flying swallow sword. Yunxi looked on weirdly seeing his childhood sweetheart's nonsense. Well, if I didn't have your seed, I would think flying swallow sword was your strongest sword skill. After all, it was the flying swallow sword which she used to defeat the 5 tiger generals. However, if compared to the terrible sky flying swallow sword was just like a feeble small bird. Besides, why were you so skilled when you used the two-handed sword? The beheading skill could even cut the dragon into 2 pieces. It was really way too powerful. Little she, you don't like a strong girl? Huahua vaguely felt that something was wrong. She asked her childhood sweetheart carefully. No, I like the way you are. The Huahua who can use flying swallow sword and the Huahua who can slay the dragon, they both are my Huahua. Looking at Huahua, who seemed a little restless, sincere words naturally came out from Yunxi's mouth. Yay. Great. This dream is great. Hua Hua put her palms together devoutly and yelled with excitement. Ah, yes. Hua Hua was always lively and confident. She is my childhood sweetheart and my first love. Looking at the cheerful Hua Hua, Yunshi smiled faintly. However, he didn't know why, but a girl with white witch uniform suddenly appeared in his heart. Yes, the trial was still going on. He should continue fighting. The side quest of the girl fighting against the evil dragon had been completed. Hua Hua's favorability had been increased and Hua Hua's seed had also been updated. The next, he should go challenge the ultimate goal. Save the princess from the giant tower. That was the ultimate goal of his formal trial. Hua Hua, goodbye. As waving his hand to Hua Hua, Yunshi was ready to step on the new battlefield. Hey, little she, where are you going? Hua Hua came after him. Wait, why didn't Hua Hua disappear? Yunshi inanely looked at his childhood sweetheart walking toward him. The side quest had been completed, and he had also obtained the reward. Shouldn't Hua Hua return to the real world? Just like what happened at the end of the last trial? No, there was something different this time. Quickly, Yunshi realized the difference. Last time, in the newbie trial, he completed the ultimate goal before Hua Hua caught him. He perfectly finished the trial, letting Hua Hua return to the real world and treat the whole event as a dream. Now, Hua Hua was just a part of the side quest. After defeating the male fiery dragon, she didn't disappear, because Yunshi hadn't completed the ultimate goal of the trial. In other words, he had to challenge the ultimate goal together with his childhood sweetheart? Well, he was glad to know that Hua Hua would team up with him, since she could be really helpful. However, Yunshi had a strong sense of foreboding. What? Yunshi, you will go to challenge enemies to practice your sword skill? Tell me, who dared to hurt you? I will kill them all. Don't be shy. No matter who they are, as long as they dare to hurt my little she, they can only die. My blade is yours. Chapter 53. The Third District in the Formal Trial. In front of the Third District, Yunshi was standing together with Hua Hua aside the flaming bonfire. Here was the only way to the tall tower. Not far away, there were dozens of third-rank people scattered on the huge bridge. Looking into the distance, on the square below their ultimate goal, the tall tower, there were 3 red stone soldiers standing amongst a group of top-level stone soldiers. Obviously, they were Yunshi's last enemies before he entered the Great Tower. Yunshi had even guessed out the identity of the 3 red stone soldiers. In the small town, except Hua Hua, the twin witches, the strange beasts, and the male fiery dragon, everyone knew who the strongest 3 people were. They were from the noblest families of the White Lotus Sword domain. They were receiving the best education since their childhood, having best weapons and talent. In a word, they were the hottest 3 people in this exam of the Sword Palace. Child Yunhe, Child Xinyan, and Child Sanquan. Is that all? After seeing the stone soldiers on the bridge and square, Hua Hua dragged the 2-handed sword as her toes lightly touched the ground. Swish! With a flash of her sword, Hua Hua didn't give Yunshi the chance to say anything. She killed all the third-rank enemies on the bridge. As some of the mortal rank's strongest people, they all were not inferior to the 5 tiger generals. Many of them were servants of noble families. A few of them were even famous masters of noble families. However, there couldn't even hold for 1 second when facing Hua Hua. Instant kill, and instant kill. Like cutting grass, Hua Hua killed all the so-called strong people instantaneously. Wait, Hua Hua. When Yunshi reacted, Hua Hua had already stepped in the last square. No kidding. If he let Hua Hua kill them all, he wouldn't obtain a piece of their souls, like the dragon scales. That was the answer Yunshi got from the volcano zone. This trial was a battlefield the stars prepared for him, not for Hua Hua, who was at 3rd rank, but could actually kill the hero rank male fiery dragon. So, even if he had to borrow Hua Hua's power, that wouldn't happen before he had to face an unbeatable enemy, which would probably appear in his ultimate goal, the Great Tower. As for the enemies who were under the hero rank, no matter how strong they were, Hua Hua could kill them all in an instant. So, he decided to kill them by himself. With the aid of an external force, perhaps he could sweep away all the enemies in this zone quite simply, but that did no help to increase his personal ability. Tut, what a troublesome rule. After knowing of Yunshi's trial, Huahua felt a little aggrieved and pouted her small mouth. In her mind, they were just some wastes that she could kill by the tins with one brandish of her sword. But her little, she still had to strenuously beat them down one by one. That was too weird. I will borrow your power at the last moment. Let's fight together by that time. After advising her earnestly, finally Yunshi stopped Huahua from her desire to kill all the enemies at once. To Huahua, the trial in the 3rd district was nothing but an extremely easy mode. She could even clean the district with her eyes closed. However, to Yunshi, this was a bloody trial which needed him to challenge his limit, understanding the true wisdom by wandering between life and death. Here we go. Though it was a death trial, but as Huahua followed and looked at him, Yunshi felt that his spirit was strangely high, showing his growth to his girl, his childhood sweetheart, his first love, that made him pretty joyful. Inside of his body, it seemed that Huahua's seed also felt his happiness and Huahua's sincerity. It started to grow sturdily. Kid, go die. On the square, at the moment the top-level stone soldiers found Yunshi, they yelled and rushed at him together. The difficulty had increased. That was Yunshi's personal feeling. Even in the 1st district, the stone soldiers rushed forward together to attack him, but their rank wasn't higher than 2nd rank. And in the volcano district, the 5 generals were challenging him one by one. If he didn't learn their weakness from Huahua's seed, he couldn't easily entice them to fall into the water and get drowned to death. Now, these 3rd-rank stone soldiers started to group together again to fight. However, something had been changed. After completing the side quest of the girl fight against the evil dragon and updating his seed from Huahua, though Yunshi's body didn't become super strong, and the souls of the 5 tiger generals weren't more than 2 green hippos worth of souls. However, his combat intuition, talent, and his use of quicksilver motion, middle level, and flying swallow sword, middle level, had been improving rapidly. After experiencing the bloody killing in the 1st district and seeing Huahua's godlike sky flying sword, Yunshi knew better than anyone what a wide gap was between Huahua and himself. He also had a strong desire to become stronger. You are nothing more than this. His enemies were at 3rd rank? So what? They were more experienced on fighting? So what? I can't kill you all as easy as Huahua, but you also can't beat me down with ease. As he used quicksilver motion, his ankles made slightly ominous sounds. That meant that he had reached the limit of his body and had reached the limit of a mortal, hovering the flying swallow sword in the air. He didn't use the stronger skill, flashing 9 sword lights, but used the most simple and elegant skill, the original flying swallow triple attack. However, this time, the flying swallow sword was being used when he was surrounded by 4 3rd-rank strong people and dozens of other people. His actions were perfect. His breathing didn't change. His heart was strongly beating in his body, but his mood was unexpectedly calm. Peace of mind. Enhance your background. Drawing out his sword. Swish. A 3rd-rank stone soldier, who tried to be the first to attack Yunshi, looked at Yunshi in disbelief. The next moment, his head slipped down to the ground, spurting vast amounts of blood in the air. For the first time, Yunshi did it. He didn't use any trick, but defeated a 3rd-rank strong person face-to-face, in an unfriendly environment that was surrounded by tens of enemies. The gap between 2 mortals had a limit. That was what Yunshi learned from Huahua's seed. Even a monster who was strong like the green hippo could be hurt by a firewood chopper. Strong men like the 5 tiger generals could also be drowned in the sea. When confronted with sword and blade, everyone in the mortal rank would get hurt. They couldn't ignore a mortal's attack like what the hero rank male fiery dragon did. Mortal rank meant flesh and blood. You would shed blood if you were cut by a sword, and you would die if your head was cut off. What was the difference between 1st-rank people and 3rd-rank people? The difference was that, when faced with a knife, one was a piece of paper and another one was a stack of papers. You are not unbeatable. Yunshi stepped back and dodged a series of slashes. Then he striked back, cutting off an arm from a 3rd-rank person. Blood sprayed on the blade, reflecting his resolute eyes. Chapter 54. Irresistible force brandish his sword, draw back his sword, kick away the enemies. As if he was a swallow flying in the sky, Yuanxi flew amongst a group of well-armed burly men. By using his evolved quicksilver motion and flying swallow sword, he dealt with the crowd like a fish in water. 1, 2, 3. 3 heads successively slipped off to the ground, spurting blood in the sky. For the first time he assaulted the 3rd district, Yuanxi had killed 3 third-rank enemies and cut off 2 people's arms. He got a really fruitful result. The trial wouldn't become easy due to his improvement. When Yuanxi showed his strongest state to fight against these 3rd-rank stone soldiers, an accident happened. An arrow was shot at him from a distance, flying through the crowd and cutting through one of Yuanxi's hand, the hand he used to hold his sword. Win or loss, the battle between masters often ended in a flash. Not to mention that the trial Yuanxi had to face was so cruel. That was a 3rd-rank archer. Yuanxi felt a little surprised as he looked at the archer in red, standing alone at the end of the bridge. In the next second, his eyes filled with blood. Arf, my little she. After seeing Yuanxi being hacked to death by the crowd, Huahua's eyes turned red. Even after Yuanxi had told her that, as long as the bonfire was still burning, he could revive from it, so she didn't need to care much about his death. However, after seeing her childhood sweetheart miserably dying in front of her, how could she bear it? How was it possible to bear it? Huahua would never bear it. You wastes, how dare you to do this to my little she? You all, go to hell. Drawing her 2-handed heavy sword, Huahua turned into a terrible shadowy figure again. That definitely wasn't something that any other 3rd-rank human could do. 1 brandish, 2 pieces. The 2-handed sword could even be used to collapse a city gate. But now, it turned into a light of killing, cutting all the 3rd-rank stone soldiers on the bridge in half. As for the archer in red, who gave Yuanxi a critical shot, he was the priority target Huahua paid attention to. The archer was sliced and diced by her. That only took her 3 seconds. And you, go die. After coming through the bridge by killing, Huahua aimed at the last 3 red stone soldiers of the 3rd district. Go. Watch out. Who is this monster? Child Yunhe, Child Xinyan, and Child San Quan entered the battle. 3 seconds later, Huahua dragged her 2-handed heavy sword, peevishly walking back to the bonfire. Behind her was a sea of corpses and blood. 10 seconds later, as usual, he revived beside the bonfire. Then, he speechlessly looked at the sea of green souls as they slowly rebuilt their bodies. Huahua, what did you do to them? Why did they all die? It seemed that if he stayed together with Huahua, the enemies who were killed by her would also become green souls. However, Huahua couldn't absorb these green souls, neither could he. So, these green souls would revive again and turn back to their original bodies. As Yuanxi was ready to challenge the cruel 3rd district again, Huahua stretched out her hand. Little she, don't keep doing it. Don't keep doing what? Yuanxi quizzically looked at his childhood sweetheart. He knew he had used all the power from Huahua's seed. You're imitating me, but we're different. Huahua seriously gazed at Yuanxi. Though in the dream Yuanxi was so cool and excellent, and she was glad to see it, but a defect was a defect. She must tell it to him. Different. Yuanxi also slightly realized that the world in Huahua's eyes was different from the world in his eyes. He couldn't say the details. However, after Huahua pointed it out, he had realized this problem, which was ignored by him all this time. Your arm length, body height, and physique are all different from mine. Flying swallow sword isn't a big problem for you, because you have enough flexibility and dexterity. The problem is the quicksilver motion. Huahua lowered her body and held Yuanxi's foot, carefully observing the bones and shape of his foot, then took off his shoes. Because Yuanxi just finished ecdysis not long ago, his skin was abnormally white, not looking like a boy's feet. Because his ecdysis was evolving according to Huahua's seed, so the flexibility and dexterity of his body were unconsciously biased toward Huahua. However, feet were the limbs that humans used the most, and was also the most sophisticated body parts that muscles developed very well. 16 years of experience remained Yuanxi a deep impression, which caused a little incongruity. Well, as I thought, here is untrained. Little she, quicksilver motion does a huge burden to the feet. Your feet still can't withstand the explosive force of quicksilver motion. Hua Hua rubbed Yuanshi's feet and told him the matter needing attention. Ah, so that's the reason. Yuanshi finally understood what the incongruity he felt was. That was true. Just like what Hua Hua said, when he used quicksilver motion to the limit, his ankles would give bad cries. That was the telltale sign of overexertion. To other third-rank people, it was already enough if their speed could be as fast as the middle-level quicksilver motion. However, Yuanshi's flaw was too big in Hua Hua's eyes. Just now, the archer in red aimed at the position you were going to go. You had forced yourself to reach the limit, so you were no longer able to make any change to your trajectory. So that meant you couldn't dodge the arrow. Besides, you pay too much attention to close combat, and you don't have the experience to deal with ranged attacks. I can teach you. Hua Hua's soft words made her Yuanshi's first and best battle tutor. Finally, Yuanshi understood how many ridiculous mistakes he made in his seemingly satisfactory performance. Oh, certainly, people were not the same. The wandering green souls revived in the 3rd district one by one, waiting for Yuanshi's challenge. Then, I'm going. Holding the newbie iron sword in his, for the 2nd time, Yuanshi walked to the cruel 3rd district. After drawing a lesson from his first try, this time, he didn't rashly force his body to reach the limit, but saved his strength in order to use quicksilver motion at any time. As he dodged the attacks from dozens of third-strong people, he also kept seeking the best timing to attack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As Yuanshi killed the 10th person, the archer in red finally found his weak point by using intuition and killed him in one shot. This archer is not simple. Looking at the black arrow cutting through his heart, Yuanshi murmured and fell to the ground. Arf, my little she. Seeing her childhood sweetheart's death with her own eyes, Hua Hua got mad again. 10 seconds later, after Yuanshi revived beside the bonfire, he saw a lot of green souls floating above a sea of blood again. Chapter 55. Title at end, Qi. Yuanshi took an arrow in the knee. Qi. Yuanshi took an arrow in the shoulder. Qi. Yuanshi took an arrow in the head. There wasn't any exception. Every time Yuanshi got shot by the archer in red, he would be chopped by all sorts of weapons in the next second. In this battle of mortal ranks, such an archer who could fire at the target 100 times without a single miss was surely the deadliest killer. Yuanshi proved that by dying 30 times. Hua Hua also left Yuanshi's enemies with a nightmare forever by her 30 massacres. Again, Yuanshi revived beside the bonfire. As he was ready to rush to the stone soldiers and fight with them, Hua Hua grabbed his hand. This can't go on, little she. Right now, you can't defeat the archer. If you don't make yourself stronger, even if you overdraw your limit, you can't walk through the bridge. Yuanshi paused for a while, then he relaxed his body and sat on the ground. Yes, Hua Hua was right. Now, even if he used his 2nd-rank power and Hua Hua's 3rd-rank combat intuition to the limit, he still couldn't pass through the bridge. After all, he wasn't Hua Hua. For the first time, Yuanshi clearly felt his limit. 1, 2, 3. Even the 3rd-rank stone soldiers on the bridge attacked him together. If he paid the price of dying hundreds of times, he probably still couldn't pass through the bridge, even if meant that he had to die for many more times. However, the archer in red was out of his expectations. Yuanshi didn't know who the mysterious archer was. No matter how perfectly he used his 2nd-rank quicksilver motion, the archer could still find his weak point among the crowd and give him a critical shot. The archer didn't even need to hit the arrow at his crucial point. In fact, Yuanshi was only directly killed by the arrow very few times. The archer's goal was to break Yuanshi's rhythm. Yuanshi's quicksilver motion looked like floating clouds and flowing water, but that was built on his strong pre-assessment. When faced with a dozen 3rd-rank masters, every second he slightly stayed at the same place would lead to a dead end. What an awesome archer! But the archer's battle style doesn't look like it's from the White Lotus sword domain. Sitting by the bonfire, Yuanshi observed the white-haired young person who carried a 2-handed long bow behind the back and wore red clothes. I tried not to show the archer's gender because that was a she. White Lotus sword domain was a lower domain of Sky sword domain. Most of the people there practiced sword skills. If there was such an archer that mastered such a terrible archery, he should already be as famous as the 5 tiger generals. He should be a stealth archer who majors in the long bow, and his close combat power is also good. Look, he wears 2 swords at the waist. Those 2 aren't ornaments, but true lethal weapons. Hua pointed at the archer in red, the person who caused his 30 failures. He should have a locking skill like the mind's eye, and he should also have the eagle eye. If I'm not wrong, he should have found his way to hero rank. Maybe he is a little weaker than the last 3 guys, but his potential is far beyond them. If he had a spirit weapon rank bow, he can cause 3 times the threat. Fortunately, his weapon is just OSO. After Hua pointed out the mysterious archer's talents one by one, Yuanxi finally understood what kind of an opponent he was facing. If even Hua also praised the archer, that meant that he was way better than the 5 tiger generals. The archer was very likely to reach hero rank in the future. No wonder he looked unlike the other stone soldiers. His red clothes and white hair made him look like a crane standing among chickens. However, he still wanted to win. No matter what he faced, he must pass the trial and become stronger. For Yuanxi, it was very rare to have such an impulse. Compared to this, his ultimate goal of saving the princess wasn't that important. The more hard it was to get, the more eager one was to get it. Perhaps that was the commonality of all humans. Hua, have you got any strategy? Holding his newbie iron sword, Yuanxi was ready to fight again. Now no. Hua carefully counted the gap between him and the stone soldiers, then shook her head. Though Yuanxi had exerted his talents to the fullest, but that was still too early for him to challenge a trial at this level. It wasn't good to die so many times. She still felt love dearly. So, I can't. Even Yuanxi had guessed this answer already, but when he heard it coming from Hua's mouth, he still felt frustrated. No. Even if the answer is no, I still can't give up. He couldn't retreat. Compared with the apostle candidates or true apostles he might encounter later on, this wasn't harsh at all. Why did the stars create this trial world? That was for tempering his will and improve his strength step by step. There were just a dozen third-rank people and a mysterious archer. Would they make him give up? He would never give up. I want to win. So sorry, Hua. I will do something to you. Can you forgive me? After thinking it over and over again, Yuanxi only got one idea in his mind. The stars, forgive me. This was the only strategy that my simple brain could imagine. Yes? I forgive you, little Shi. Hua curiously looked at Yuanxi. Was he willing to let her help him pass the trial? In fact, the trial really pissed her off. She couldn't bear the trial because it forced her little Shi to die, again and again. Then, close your eyes, Hua. Yuanxi stealthily walked up to Hua with a red face. Gee, little Shi, what do you want to do? No. Looking at Yuanxi's face getting closer and closer, Hua was in a dither. No. When did her little Shi become so daring? And why does he look so skillful? Whoa. As Hua cried out in alarm, Yuanxi softly kissed Hua's lips. It wasn't their first kiss. In their childhood, he had secretly kissed her in their children's play. However, this time, it was different. Looking at Hua, Yuanxi managed to muster up all his courage to take this step. Not long ago, his childhood sweetheart used a 2-handed sword to cut a male fiery dragon into pieces. To kiss such a Hua was like challenging the evil dragon. If Hua wasn't his childhood sweetheart, Yuanxi wouldn't dare try it. Hua's lips were soft and sweet. They were still as warm as in Yuanxi's memory. At the moment he kissed Hua's lips, Yuanxi clearly felt that inside of his body, Hua's seed acted like a dry plant that suddenly got irrigated. It started to grow up at a ridiculous speed. 1%, 2%, 3%. Chapter 56. The Dawn of Victory. Hoo. Sitting beside the bonfire, Hua's little finger drew a circle on the ground round and round. My little Shi is corrupted. You were bullying me. Her beautiful cheeks all blushed to the root of her ears. If you looked carefully, you would find that in her dewy big eyes, there was excitement and agitation. Because the relationship between Yuanxi and her had a rapid advance just now. To Hua, it was a great advance. Unlike all their kisses in the past, this time, Yunshi's kiss had a special meaning. Ah, what a wonderful world. She decided to keep this dream firmly in her mind. She must kept it in her mind. She didn't want it to become fuzzy like the dream she dreamed last time. Ta. Among the big burly stone soldiers, Yunshi jumped up. However, his eyes kept gazing at the dangerous archer in red. Just as he expected, at the moment he jumped up, the white-haired archer in red shot an arrow at him. The arrow rotated like a black hound jumping in the air. If he got hit, it would definitely cut through his body. Now, Yunshi held the newbie iron sword horizontally in front of himself and blocked the bloody hound-like arrow in time, then jumped out of the encirclement. Flying Swallow six-fold attack. The nimble sword light flashed among the crowd. The sharp, strengthened blade of the newbie iron sword cut off the third-rank enemies' heads one after another. This time, the speed of Flying Swallow's six-fold attack didn't reach the limit that Yunshi could reach. However, it was way more easy and smooth than any Flying Swallow's six-fold attack he used before. The connection between his two moves was near perfect. Chi. At the very moment Yunshi just finished his Flying Swallow's six-fold attack, the second sniper arrow was shot at him. This time, it was a lightning speed arrow and was shot at him through the crowd. If Yunshi didn't kiss Huahua just now, he wouldn't be able to dodge this arrow. Ding! Still, at the critical moment, Yunshi's focus reached a new height. He blocked the arrow, and using the impacting force of the arrow, he used Quicksilver motion to step back, breaking away from the battle. Step back. This was what Huahua's seed taught Yunshi after its high-speed growth. Temporarily stepping back wasn't equal to escaping, but for the sake of accumulating stronger power for the following attack. It was extremely attractive to play one's power to the best and dancing the blade of battle. However, Yunshi wasn't Huahua. He wasn't able to do that. So, by combining it with his own characteristics, he decided to challenge his opponents and also grasp the dominant right in his own hands at the same time. That should be the best tactic. Now, after kissing Huahua, Yunshi finally grew to a degree that was able to do this. 3% growth degree. That not only improved Yunshi's physical fitness, but also made his understanding of battles reach a new level. For the first time, he tried to let Huahua's talent fit his body and change his battle style. In the past, he was too reliant on the power of Huahua's seed. It could even be called as superstition. He thought that, as long as he could play the power of the seed to the limit, he would never be defeated, till he met the terrible archer in red. He finally understood that Huahua and him were different. When Huahua was at the second rank, she could pass this through the bridge and no one could stop her. However, he couldn't. The thing he could do was different from Huahua. Admitting it made him understand Huahua's power much more and absorb the properties of Huahua's seed in the meanwhile. Huahua could turn into a flying sword to kill the giant dragon, to kill everything refusing to obey her. As for him, the thing he could do now was Flying Swallow. Triple attack. The sharp blade of sword flew in the air like a flying swallow. It shot down an arrow and cut off 3 high-level stone soldiers' arms at the same time. He didn't need to give them critical attacks every time. He just needed to cut down their battle power bit by bit. As long as he could control the rhythm of the battle, he could finally obtain victory. The kiss with Huahua was the kiss of the goddess of victory that could bring him the dawn of victory. Kala. Kala. In the face of Yunshi's sword, the last stone soldier's body also toppled down to the ground. A smile appeared on Yunshi's sweaty face. He did it. Now, in the entire 3rd district, there was only the last 3 red stone soldiers and the archer in red, who were standing at the end of the bridge. The archer in red didn't give Yunshi time to take a rest, but took the bow and adjusted the arrow, then shot to the sky. Come on. Yunshi rushed to the last enemies on the bridge. Cough. Bruised, Yunshi dragged his tired body to return to the bonfire. Little Shi. Huahua lovingly looked at Yunshi. After walking through the bridge, Yunshi didn't step in the square immediately, but walked back to the bonfire. The last enemy, the archer in red, was more powerful than Yunshi's expectation. Double arrow, shattering arrow, spiraling arrow, and tracking arrow. Just in order to go to him, Yunshi's body had been covered with blood. The most desperate thing was that this guy's close combat ability wasn't any inferior than his archery. After sublimating Huahua's seed, Yuanxi still fought with him for over 100 turns, then finally beat him down by using his enhanced newbie iron sword. If it was said in a rude manner, perhaps among all the people Yuanxi'd seen, the archer in red was a person who was only second to Huahua. If Yuanxi didn't have the enhanced Huahua's seed, he was no match for him. The thing which finally determined the winner was the gap between their weapons. As Huahua said, the archer's two swords were made up of stainless steel, but it was still inferior compared to Yuanxi's newbie iron sword, which had been enhanced to its limit. After defeating the tough archer in red, Yuanxi was exhausted. He had to return to the bonfire to take a rest. Plop. After walking back to the bonfire zone and feeling the warm fire again, Yuanxi directly stumbled into Huahua's arms. Yuanxi was too tired, though it was just a trial and a dream, but it still exhausted Yuanxi's mind and spirit. He heard a familiar song around his ears. It was so soft and peaceful. Was it a cradle song? Had the battle finished? No, not yet. Yuanxi opened his eyes, then saw his childhood sweetheart's smiling face, and heard her soft song. The position was right above himself. Little Shi, are you awake? Huahua put Yuanxi's head on her knees. She softly wiped Yuanxi's forehead, gazing at him with her tender eyes. The trial's not finished. Laying on Huahua's knees, Yuanxi smiled at his childhood sweetheart with confidence. Sure enough, you were my goddess of victory, Huahua. Chapter 57. The three childs at the end of the coastline, standing in front of the great tower with ignited huge flames. Eventually, Yuanxi came to the last opponents of this district. They were the noble geniuses from White Lotus Sword Domain or higher sword domains. Child Yunhe, Child Xinyan, and Child Sanquan. Three people who had different temperaments. Child Yunhe was from Yunhe City. He carried the crane-wing twin swords on his back. They were twin swords, just like the swords the second child of Yunhe City, who had been defeated by Yuanxi just now, owned. Unlike the two crane swords, the curve of crane-wing twin swords was more smooth. At the side of their blades, there were beautiful wing-like lines. They were true spirit weapons, famous as two swords that were handed down from generation to generation in Yunhe City. In the future, it had the possibility to become a lower-grade divine weapon or even a true divine weapon. If viewing from their weapons, Child Yunhe was the strongest one among the three people. Snakebone Soft Sword was no match for the pair of crane-wing twin swords. Child Xinyan was from Xinyan City. He was over 2 meters tall and had long and strong forelimbs. He used a blue-lit two-handed sword. Judging from its scale, his two-handed heavy sword looked a little like the standard two-handed sword Huahua used. However, it looked heavier and full of oppressiveness. Undoubtedly, it was a spirit weapon. A weapon belonged to the hero rank. The last person was Child Sanquan. He used a special sword, a fan sword. It looked like a fan, but it wasn't a fan. It looked like a sword, but it wasn't a sword neither. This special weapon was made up of 5 sharp blades, and every blade was engraved with weird runes and looked pretty mysterious. Apparently, it wasn't a simple attacking weapon. Associated with his identity of minoring and being swordsman, Taoist priest, and alchemist at the same time. Maybe this fan sword also had other secrets. The three people all inherited their nobility bloodlines, because they looked pretty handsome. Child Yunhe looked pretty cultured. His appearance fitted the aesthetics of the people of Eastern domains. Child Xinyan's bloodline was from the Western Gods domain. His over 2 meters body height and long, strong forelimbs gave people a strong oppressive feeling. Child Sanquan was from a high-level sword domain. He looked unlike a swordsman, but a little feminine. At this moment, faint red lights emitted out from their bodies, which pointed out their identity as the strongest people in this district. They had excellent bloodlines, received best educations, and owned the best equipments. They were the best children of nobility above all the people at the same age, and were generally rated as the top 3 people among all the candidates of the entrance examination of the Sword Palace. Not only the exam of the Sword Palace. Among all third-rank people, they were still on the top of the pyramid of power. People like the 5 Tiger Generals couldn't compare with them at all. Maybe the archer in red, who was so poor that couldn't buy a good equipment, was slightly better than them. However, his combat power was still slightly inferior. There you are. Child Yun, he drew out the crane-winged twin swords from his back, looking at Yun she as fiercely as a tiger. We were waiting for you for a long time. Child Xin Yin freed his hands and legs. He looked to be itching for a try. You've beat down one of us 4 kings. However, he is the weakest one among us. Don't think that we are as weak as him. Child San Quan shook his fingers. When he looked at Yun Shi, he behaved as if he were looking at a corpse. We're the 3 strongest people. I know. In common sense, you were the strongest third-rank people. Geniuses above all geniuses. Yun Shi looked at the 3 people, who were chosen as his ultimate opponents on the way leading to the Great Tower. He also admitted this point. If he didn't have the Star's trial system for the Star Child, he wouldn't even be qualified to compare himself with these 3 people. They were high and mighty, and didn't even glance at mortals. Only the hero rank was their goal. From their births, they had the best cultivation conditions and received the best educations. They had left all ordinary people far away behind them from the beginning. These 3 people were the pride of the noble families of White Lotus Sword Domain. They were the seeds the noble families were going to send to the Sword Palace. After they grew up, they would naturally occupy more discourse power in White Lotus Sword Domain and help their families shore up their positions. Class wasn't a thing that could be seen through eyes, but it had already been engraved in every corner of society. In their eyes, as a baker, Yun Shi didn't even have the right to stand together with them. Say it. How do you want to be killed? Child Yun, he stepped forward. As a super genius educated by his noble family, he had absolute confidence. Every time he used his crane-winged twin swords, they must savor the addictive taste of the blood of its enemy. Don't regard those so-called childs as some hot houseflowers. Since he inherited the name Child Yun He of this generation, that meant that he had really stepped in battlefield. You 4 kings are indeed very strong. Yun Shi held up his newbie wooden shield and rushed to Child Yun He without hesitation. Haha, you're brave. As a reward, I will send you to hell. Child Yun He laughed and threw the female sword of the crane-winged twin swords to the sky. The light female sword drew an elegant arc in the sky, spinning round and round, flying at Yun Shi along a trace that could never be thrown by a human. It looked like a flying crane wing, but also like a roaring dragon. This was the secret sword skill of Yun He City, a super sword skill that had been inherited from generation to generation. That was too fast. Yun Shi forcefully stopped his quicksilver motion halfway. The next moment, a familiar scene happened. With a yell of rage, the hugest person of the 3 people jumped to the sky. As terrible as if a heavy mountain fell from the sky, he raised the 2-handed heavy sword and chopped it toward Yun Shi. Swifter, higher, and stronger. Compared to the combined assault of the first stone soldier army, these 2 people's joint attack was perfect. No, the most dangerous person still hadn't attacked him yet. Where would he launch an attack? Hee. With a cold laugh, 3 sword blades suddenly appeared under Yun Shi's feet and woven into a metallic sword net in an instant. Was it some kind of Taoist art or some kind of occult art of alchemy? Yun Shi didn't even find what the method Child San Quan attacked him was, as he lost his biggest advantage, the flexibility his quicksilver motion brought to him. If Yun Shi didn't kiss Huahua, he'd already be dead now. He first made a backflip, then threw out the wooden shield from his hand. He leaned to one side and jumped away. Boom! As if it was a meteorite falling down to the ground, a blue-lit heavy sword heavily hit on the position where Yun Shi was standing at and made a few meters wide crack on the ground. It was hard to believe that it was a damage that a mortal caused. Comparing to the high-level stone soldier of the first stone soldier army, perhaps the leap attack Child Xin Yin used was 10 times stronger than it. No, they're not done yet. Swish! The fatal sound of a sword slicing through the air came at him. That was the sound of the crane-winged twin swords. Chapter 58. Dancing crane swords, flying. After releasing the twin swords, Child Yun he laughed loudly and smugly. The flying crane swords crossed each other, blocking all the routes Yun Shi may escape his attack. Just like what Huahua told him. Gazing at the twin swords locking his body, Yuanshi's heart became quiet conversely. His mind had integrated into the nature. Even as he was in a most hostile environment, he didn't panic. This was a realm that many hero-ranked people couldn't reach. Little Shi, these three are wastes, but wastes are still different. Among the three people, the most threatening person for you isn't the strongest one, but the one who has the best weapon. So, in order to kill them all, you have to break their most powerful advantage first. After fighting with the three childs, Yunshi quickly understood that Hua was right. Child Xinyan had the strongest strength and attack power. His attacks were bold, a little like the 5 tiger generals, and should be practiced on battlefields. Child Sanquan knew the most flexible tactics and most sinister attacking methods. His power obviously was the strongest among the three people. However, Child Yun he was the strongest person, because he had the crane wing twin swords. After being used by the best geniuses of Yunhe City from generation to generation, the pair of famous swords had special inside foundations and spirit chi. Well, I think I have to use that. After crossing the newbie iron sword in front of himself, Yunshi blocked the crossing attack of the crane wing twin swords from the front. Ding! The crane wing twin swords skillfully parried the newbie iron sword and cut through Yunshi's body. Right now, Yunshi used the secret skill which appeared in his mind after kissing Hua. Before the twin swords started stirring in Yunshi's body, it was stopped by a gust of colossal power of essence and blood. Instant refining. Blood-stained secret skill. Instantly, 10% of his blood was drawn out from his body and poured into the crane wing twin swords. This was a power that mortals could have, but it was a secret skill that could only be used by hero ranks. It was a taboo skill. Yunshi didn't know where and how Hua learned it, but the self-damaging secret skill was the main reason he made the following tactic. Catching the crane wing twin swords was the most important step of the tactic. What? Child Yunhe shivered, then unbelievably found that crane wing twin swords lost contact with his blood and soul in an instant. It would be about 30 seconds. The secret skill he learned from Hua's seed was a taboo skill. It used his blood as sacrifice to obtain the right to control a powerful weapon temporarily. It seemed that this secret skill was invented for robbing an enemy's mighty weapon in the shortest time after losing the weapon on the battlefield. To a low-level weapon, he could obtain right of use by using the blood-stained secret skill once. However, Yunshi was trying to control a hero-ranked spirit weapon as a second-rank mortal. Even if he paid with 10% of his blood, he only obtained its right of use for 30 seconds. However, that was enough. Now, I will show you the true power of Hua's seed. Crane wing twin swords, twin fly. Yunshi had never practiced the secret sword skill of Yunhe City, but after controlling the crane wing twin swords, Yunshi naturally understood how to use the pair of spirit weapons. No, hurry back. No one could understand how terrible the crane wing twin swords were more than Child Yunhe. It was a lethal weapon above all mortal-ranked weapons. Don't panic. Child Xinyan held his blue sword with 2 hands, then centered on himself, using the terrible skill Blade Storm. Fool! The crane wing twin swords can fly. Child Yunhe shouted as he quickly ran away. Chi! The twin swords looked like 2 flying cranes, but also like 2 flying dragons. Under Yunshi's control, they cut through Child Xinyan's body from up to down. From his skull to his spine, from his censored body part to his throat. Before Child Xinyan played any of his strengths, he had been killed by the swords. Damn it! Why didn't you tell me your spirit weapon already had a spirit? After seeing the true power of crane wing twin swords, Child Sanquan couldn't keep calm but changed colors. No, even I can't make it so powerful. Child Yun he was also puzzled. As a pair of spirit weapons made by the successor of the legendary craftsman Oyizi, crane wing twin swords had a hidden property. Its power depended on its user's sword talent. That kid could use such a terrible killing attack using the crane wing twin swords. Did that mean that the kid's sword talent was higher than his? How was it possible? His sword talent was acknowledged as the #1 within in 1,000 miles radius. If it was talking about sword talent, even Child Sanquan was a little inferior to him. Crane Wing, Dance of Chaos. Yunshi also didn't expect that Hua's sword talent could combine with the crane-wing twin swords so perfectly. He could even hear the satisfied quivering sound of the flying twin swords. After being forged by the successor of Oyizi, crane-wing twin swords had never met such a super sword genius like Yunshi. At first, he could only control them for 30 seconds. After finding Yunshi's super sword talent, crane-wing twin swords initiatively extended the use time. If a spirit weapon wanted to become a divine weapon, it needed not only time, but also had to have a legendary master. Swish, swish, swish. At first, it was just a mortal rank crossing attack, but crane-wing twin swords played over its usual performance, making it like hero rank chasing attacks. In order to please its new master, Yunshi, crane-wing twin swords played over its usual performance. It chopped and minced Child Yunhe, its former master, and Child Sanquan, who didn't even have the chance to show his abilities. After crane-wing twin swords flew back to Yunshi's hands and acted as if it was a girl who walked off the stage, Yunshi opened his mouth widely and realized that he had walked through the 3rd district leading to the ultimate Great Tower. 3 green souls flew out from their bodies and reluctantly flew into Yunshi's body. They were absorbed by Yunshi together with the souls of the other high-level stone soldiers and the soul of the unknown archer in red. Well, they're equal to 10 green hippos worth of souls. After feeling the power of the souls in his body, Yunshi grinned from ear to ear. 3 childs, what 3 wonderful gifts you are. In fact, you were the weakest 3 people of the 4 kings, right? The archer in red was more powerful than you. His power was pure and strong, and he didn't rely on any equipments. If the crane-wing twin swords belonged to the archer in red, she didn't think he could pull through the 3rd district. Chapter 59. The Tower of Songyun. She closed his eyes and held crane-wing twin swords, which just flew back to his hands. On his chest, the wound cut through by the swords started to heal. Due to the extraordinary performance of the crane-wing twin swords, his desperate tactic achieved complete success, including Child Yunhe, Child Xinyan, and Child Sanquan. Even Yunshi himself didn't expect that the pair of crane-wing twin swords would display such terrible strength in his hands. Hiss! Huh! By using the breathing method he learned from Hua, Yunshi recovered his health and observed the secret of crane-wing twin swords at the same time. The twin swords were the best weapons she had ever obtained. By holding them in his hands, he could feel the difference between it and mortal weapons. It was so light. That was the first impression she had holding them. Why could the twin swords fly in the air so nimbly? It was all due to its property of being as light as nothing. As long as he could control them, he could easily use all sorts of inconceivable flying sword skills. Between the female sword and the male sword, there were special attractive and repulsive forces. Plus the exquisite wing patterns on the blade, the twin swords have incredible maneuverability in air combat. The most important thing was that when Yunshi held the twin swords in his hands, he could feel the palpitation of the twin swords from the bottom of his heart. He even vaguely felt that it was linking with his bloodline. Spirit weapon. They were a pair of top-quality spirit weapons. Holding the twin swords in his hands, Yunshi loved them so much that he almost couldn't bear to part with them. Little she, this pair of swords are only suitable for the people below the hero rank. It's not that precious. Seeing that Yunshi's eyes were so eager when he looked at crane-wing twin swords, Hua felt a little jealous. Naturally, he knew the twin swords were unusual. They could even be called prospective divine weapon. She didn't know why, but it seemed that the twin swords were very suitable for Yunshi. Bloodstain's secret skill couldn't make the twin swords act like that. Let me have a look. Hua took the crane-wing twin swords from Yunshi's hands. She gazed at it, then frowned. Something was wrong. The twin swords were rejecting her. They were good swords. However, she didn't know why, but they disliked her. If she used Bloodstain's secret skill to force it to obey her, it'd probably choose to self-damage to avoid it. Yunshi could use it. That waste could barely use it too, but not her. Why? Did the twin swords discriminate against women? It's a pity that I can only use you in the trial. After taking the twin swords back, Yunshi said and shrugged his shoulders. There did exist such a wonderful, occasional encounter in the world. He had never seen the crane-winged twin swords before, but after obtaining it, he immediately found that it was as if it was tailor-made for him. It was light like nothing, very suitable for Unwilling, since he was practicing the flying swallow sword. In addition to its nimble attack style and its deadliness that was beyond the mortal rank, it and Unwilling were like a match made in heaven. Ding! The crane-winged twin swords made an euphonious sword tremolo. It made Unwilling's heart quiver for an instant, looking like he vaguely felt something. Unfortunately, Unwilling was still at mortal rank. He didn't know what did this mean. Okay, let's put the twin swords aside and go to the ultimate great tower. Because she was prohibited to help Unwilling in the 3rd district, Hua was pretty angry by now. She was already tired of killing a group of wastes dozens of times. Now, it was her showtime. No matter who you were, as long as you dared to get in Unwilling's way, I will sweep you all away. Well, I have a foreboding. The ultimate trial won't be that easy. Unwilling raised his head, looking at the giant great tower. If the thing evolved as his though, perhaps the ultimate trial would be extremely difficult. The twin witches. Would the enemy be White Lotus or Red Lotus? Suddenly, countless bells resounded on the empty coastline. Along with the light, a pure song swept the land. The bloody 1st district, the 2nd district of the erupting volcano, the brutal 3rd district. In all the districts, all blood and dust were purified by the song. A gust of strong power swept the entire coastline. What a terrible power! For the first time, Hua changed her expression. This was the first time that Unwilling saw such a serious expression on his childhood sweetheart's face. Even when she fought against the hero-rank male fiery dragon, she still looked very casual and relaxed. Since their childhood, Unwilling had never seen such a solemn look on Hua's face. Tonight, no one sleeps. My prince, come to meet me. The following curses will come true one by one. The world won't accept you, and you will be swallowed by the darkness. Whether you decide to come or escape, you will be cursed. It will chase you and kill you. Incarnadine the sky, blacked the earth. Blood has nourished the monster, and the nightmare has opened its eyes. Only the tower, shining as usual. Come on, go to the top of the tower and meet your princess. Only the person who broke the prisoner's cage can reach the place of the princess. With the familiar sound of singing, the little coastline world started to change its color to what the girl sang. The sky was incarnadined by blood. The earth was swallowed by the darkness. The 1st district, the 2nd district, and the 3rd district were swallowed and covered by the mists of darkness one by one. Dimly, he saw large quantities of monsters running out from the mists. Unlike the opponents transformed from the childs, the 5 tiger generals and all sorts of strange beasts, those stuffs walking out from the darkness were covered in thick air of death. They looked like ashes that had been deprived by all warmth. Go! Unwilling grasped Hua's little hands, who hadn't yet understood what happened, rushing together into the only light and hope of the world, the great tower. The last trial was coming. He had no way to go unless he went to the top of the tower and saved the imprisoned princess. Unwilling didn't know what would happen if he lost the trial, but his instinct told him that those black stuffs weren't good. They weren't some gifts that the stars prepared for him. The trial wasn't a game. Unwilling knew that better than anyone. The nightmare was coming. Now, he and Hua needed to find the light, the last hope of the world. My princess, I'm coming to save you. Chapter 60. Princess and Guardian My Prince? Princess? After being pulled and entering the great tower with Unwilling and hearing the melodious singing echoing around the sky and earth, Hua looked at Unwilling with suspicion. She felt that something in the dream was wrong. If this was a dream, how could she feel the touch of Unwilling's hand, their heartbeats as they ran together, and her irrepressible euphoria? They were all too real. I wander in the darkness. Once dreamed the whisper that no one could hear. Now, I see the road, the fate, at least at this moment. Let me open myself to you. The unreachable wish, the trampled wing. Lowering my head in the darkness and waiting for your coming. The shadow of tears, the shadow of the moon. They overflow my palms. My lips are trembling in the darkness. Come to find me, come to look at me. Treat me as the world's best princess, my prince. Even I'm covered in bumps and bruises, I don't regret to falling in love with you. As long as I can stay with you, enjoying the same time with you, darkness and sadness will warm up. The whirling mist let me forge the ring of star and moon for you, in order to witness our forever love. Our love will turn into light, shining the darkness and going to immortal. The sad, soft, hot, yearning sound of singing resounded in the old great tower, winding around Yuanshi's body. That was confession and confidence. It was the last light and the only hope in the world that would be covered by darkness. Here was the Tower of Fire, the last redemption of the world. Ah, who is she? How dare she sing such a shameless song? Little she, tell me, it's not a song about you, right? Hua Hua was trying to overcome her desire to draw out the two-handed sword from her back while displaying a murderous look on her face. His childhood sweetheart's radar of jealousy was starting to scan the potential rival from all directions. This is my first time coming here. Yunshi wasn't lying, but he didn't tell her the truth either. Who was the princess he needed to save? What was the relationship between the princess and the world which was going to be swallowed by darkness? Too many questions appeared in Yunshi's heart. This was his first time taking the formal trial. Compared to the formal trial, the trial in the dark forest was like a playing house game. After running and running, there wasn't any monster in the empty great tower. There was only a spiral staircase leading to the top of the tower, and the more and more terrible atmosphere as he ran upwards. Be careful, little she. There are probably very strong enemies. Hua Hua had found this at the first moment she stepped in the great tower. She could feel a very terrible atmosphere at the top of the great tower. There was a burning flame. There was a shining light. That wasn't an opponent the male fiery dragon could be comparable to. I know. My opponents are very strong. However, we have no choice. To Hua Hua, this was just a dream. It wouldn't be hurt even she died. However, as the tested person, there was no way back for Yunshi. Even at the top of the tower, that was as dangerous as Dragon's Nest or a tiger's cave. He had to go to there to finish the ultimate goal of the trial, save the princess. If so, I will fight side by side with you. We will win, no matter who the enemy is. Hua Hua's eyes looked unprecedentedly serious. Comparing to the time she casually killed the male fiery dragon, now, Hua Hua's battle will was fully on. Boom! The two-handed sword broke the door leading to the top of the tower. Yunshi and Hua Hua rushed together into the last battlefield. On a huge wooden cross, the Holy Virgin White Lotus was tied in the center of the cross by black chains. The raging fire was burning her, but there was no signs of scorching on her small naked feet. My prince, though her two hands were hung on the cross and her whole body was tied by black chains, White Lotus's pale eyes still gazed at Yunshi with happiness. Prince. Hua Hua glanced at Yunshi with a weird look, then tightly stared at White Lotus. Why? Why this girl looks so familiar? I remember as if in the last dream. Boom. Before Hua Hua remembered anything, the fire licked White Lotus's feet and raised to the sky. The enormous power broke the tower top, and then, a 3 meters tall monster, who was surrounded by flames, appeared in front of Yunshi's eyes. It wore a crimson armor skirt, held a scarlet flame sword with spiral grooves, and looked like a translucent woman. Even if it just stood still, it had almost made Yunshi choke. On her morning glow-like cloak, large amounts of fire powders were burning and dancing along with her breathing. Jump, little she. Hua Hua's words warned Yunshi in time. Subconsciously, Yunshi jumped up. Swish! Countless fire powders came crashing through below Yunshi's feet. If Yunshi hesitated just now, he'd have died. She wasn't like any enemy Yunshi met before. If he didn't hear Hua Hua's warning, perhaps he'd have been killed at the first instant. In the face of 10 times power, any tactics, strategies, or skills were useless. Moreover, the power of the red monster was far more than 10 times Yunshi's power. Sister. No. White Lotus anxiously gazed at the huge figure, which was wrapped by flames and was temporarily separated from her. Get out of the way. Red Lotus snappily stared at Yunxi, raising her Red Lotus holy sword again. She didn't know why she had this inexplicable dream again. Besides, she had to separate from her sister White Lotus temporarily, becoming her sister's flame guardian spirit. It seemed that this form conformed to some rule of the world, and she felt it was very easy to handle. However, due to this, she had to defeat any people who dared to get close to the princess. She didn't need anyone to tell her to do it, because it was an elder sister's natural duty to kill any bad men who dared to get close to her little sister, right? You want to kill my little she? Apparently, Huahua didn't realize who the flame guardian spirit was, but at the very moment she saw the spirit attack Yunxi, she lost her temper. This time, she wouldn't allow Yunxi to fight against the guardian spirit, because though she didn't know who the flame guardian spirit was, but even 10 male fiery dragons weren't her opponent. Even if they were at the same hero rank, there was still a large gap among different individuals. This spirit was a troublesome one. It seemed she couldn't keep hiding her true power. Fortunately, this was just a dream. She didn't need to worry about how to deal with it if she damaged the environment too much. I will show you the true power of the sky-flying bloodline. As blood dropped down from her fingers, Huahua's eyes changed. I am sorry for the delays this week. Just out back from the hospital about 2 days ago. Been lying in there for a week. Anyways, chapters like usual. Please enjoy. Please check it out our Patreon page. Q1. Chapter 61. Tragic Azura. The booming sounds of metal colliding resounded at the top of the exploded Great Tower. Yunxi's childhood sweetheart and the Red Lotus Holy Virgin of the Twin Witches were starting a fighting that was far beyond Yunxi's understanding. They were both super geniuses. One of them was Yunxi's childhood sweetheart, who he never understood thoroughly, and was a super sword girl that could use the god sword skill Sky Flying Sword. The other was Red Lotus, who succeeded the position of the Witch of White Lotus Sword Domain, and was so famous that you could even hear her name in Western God's domain. In order to protect Yunxi, in order to protect White Lotus, enemy, die. Invader, die. What? Was this a fighting I could take sides in? Watching the fighting between Huahua and Red Lotus, Yunxi felt he was totally useless when faced with a fight at this level. Prince, come here. Taking the opportunity that Huahua and her sister fought so fiercely that they couldn't distract themselves from the fighting, White Lotus stealthily waved her hands to Yunxi. Your Highness Holy Virgin, what are you doing? After blocking the shock wave caused by the fighting between the two monsters, Yunxi tried his best to go toward the tied White Lotus Holy Virgin. I did nothing. Some power of the world influenced my sister. She became that violent monster. She also wanted to be a quiet, sleeping beauty waiting for her prince's kiss. However, it seemed that some rules of the world chained her on the wooden cross from the moment she entered the world, and her sister became the eternal flame spirit guarding her. The only thing she could do was to sing from the top of the single great tower to call her prince to save her. I see. How can I save you? After knowing the origin and development, Yunxi was having cold sweat. If he didn't go perform the side quest and obtained Huahua's help and only used his own power, even if he passed through the 3rd district due to luck, he would be killed by Red Lotus at the very instant he faced the ultimate challenge. What an extremely difficult formal trial. The star's special consideration made Yunxi want to cry. You can. White Lotus gazed at Yunxi with tenderness and love. Even if Huahua wasn't here, she could still help Yunxi. The most difficult part of the trial was how to enter the Great Tower. I'm waiting for you, my prince. Do you remember the love token you gave me? This world has its own rules. You need to do one thing to suppress my sister and save me. As hearing White Lotus's plan, Yunxi couldn't stop beads of sweat dripping from his forehead and back. If he did that, Huahua would kill him. Huawei, if he didn't do it, the world would be destroyed. Oh, he didn't want to make mistakes. It was the world forcing him. Huahua lightly leapt up. In her hands, the two-handed heavy sword, which could even be used as siege weapon, burst out blue light. Temporarily, Huahua overcame the gravity, standing upside down in the sky. At that moment, time also temporarily stopped. Even the burning fire powders which surrounded Red Lotus also paused in the sky by the will and spirit of Huahua's sword. Skyfly, crossing slash. The 3 meters tall guardian spirit's body was covered with wounds and exposed Red Lotus's true body inside it. Her 2 hands raised her Red Lotus holy sword as the blazing cloak waved on her back by the wind. Hot sun, burning the sky. A column of scorching fire raised to the sky. This was a fighting between extraordinary power and extraordinary power, a bloody battle between 2 hero-rank strong people. The tremendous crossed sword light and the huge column of fire exploded together. They almost destroyed half of the giant great tower. Great! Huahua was very excited. She had waited too long to meet such a spicy battle with an opponent at the same level with her. You! Wait, bastard! What are you doing? At first, Red Lotus was absorbed in staring at Huahua, the most threatening enemy. However, when she took a chance to glance at her sister, her anger exploded. Boom! Countless flames burst out. Regardless of having turned her back to Huahua, Red Lotus frantically rushed to the cross. Little she. Huahua didn't take this opportunity to attack Red Lotus, because she was even angrier than Red Lotus. Her little she, her childhood sweetheart, was holding the poor, lovely girl's hands. He lowered his head and gave the girl a soft, sweet kiss on her hand. Erf! White Lotus. New. Little she. Red Lotus and Huahua went mad together. I give you my love. In that case, I can shine the world. White Lotus was indulging in Yunshi's kiss. Finally, she tried to be the first. The time between 2 lovers was so sweet. I wanted all your first experiences. I wanted to become the only one in your heart. For you, I willed to become the eternal flame of the world, to deprive all darkness. You were the light of my life. You were the forever I hoped. You were the lover I waited. Give it to me, my prince. White Lotus reached out her small hands and put the ring of star and moon she forged in Yunshi's hands. Yunshi could feel killing intent. 2 very strong killing intents. One was from his powerful childhood sweetheart, the unbeatable sword girl, who could kill the male fiery dragon like she was killing a poor dog. Another was from White Lotus's elder sister, Red Lotus, one of the twin witches, who could turn into a burning guardian spirit. None of them was an opponent that he could be a good match for. More exactly, he could only wait to be killed by them. What should he do to defuse the crisis? At this time, Yunshi vaguely understood how his past life died. Fortunately, he had a backup this time. The girl was also the most important person of the world. Though he didn't know why she wanted him to give her the ring, which looked totally unlike the Mycalix he presented her before, however, since he didn't have more information, this was his only choice. You bastard! Don't touch my White Lotus! Red Lotus got crazy. She turned into the red-hot guardian spirit, rushing towards Yunshi. She really wanted to kill him. Little she, explain this. Huahua leapt to the sky again. The 2-handed heavy sword was dyed bright red. She was angry. This was the first time that Yunshi saw Huahua so angry. This was I playing with fire? Yunshi tried to weep, but failed to shed a tear. He could only look at the girl with the ring of star and moon in his arms. Don't worry. Trust me. Trust me. Trust the girl who was always waiting for you. After putting the ring of star and moon on her head, White Lotus looked pretty happy. Again, the song resounded in the world, which was going to be swallowed by the darkness. I wander in the darkness. Once dreamed the whisper that no one could hear, the unreachable wish and the trampled wing, lowering my head in the darkness and waiting for your coming. The whirling mist let me forge the ring of star and moon for you, in order to witness our forever love. Our love will turn into light, shining the darkness and going to immortal. I am sorry for the delays this week, just out back from the hospital about 2 days ago, been lying in there for a week. Anyways, chapters like usual, please enjoy. Please check it out our Patreon page. Q1. Chapter 62. The primal fire inside the stainless white radiance. White Lotus guided Yunshi's hands to put the ring of star and moon on her head, declaring to the world their brave oath. Today, I hold his hands and tell all the people in the world. From this day forward, I'm going to a couple with him. For rich or for poor. For better or for worse. Like the stars shining in the infinite night sky. Our hearts linked together, never to be separated. We wish for love. We want to stay together. If our tenderness can suffuse the world, that would be fantastic. No, not only so. For you, I'm willing to become the eternal flame to bring light to the world. That was the girl's decision. For the sake of her lover, she volunteered for that. The world was filled with darkness and despair. Countless dead souls were wandering in the nightmare. They couldn't rest. They couldn't sleep. Therefore, she would become the light that would light up the world, to be the initial fire. Boom, between earth and sky, a huge white lotus bloomed. Then a layer of crimson fire surrounded White Lotus. White Lotus and Red Lotus combined together in such a weird way. At the last sanctuary of the world, they lit the column of fire, shining the sky and earth. The red sky and black earth ushered light again. One after another, bonfires appeared in all the corners of the dark world. The world was lighting up. Even the fire couldn't change the true nature of the dark world. It just brought a slender hope. She could barely see the puzzled souls going towards those bonfires from the void. Then they transformed into human figures, gazing at their own two hands in confusion. They didn't have memories of their pasts, but also represented the hope of the world. They were ashes birthed from fire, wandering souls corrupted by the dark world. The tower of fire lit up by White Lotus and Red Lotus supported them so that they could be born in the bonfire. The destiny of the world had changed. The world, which was supposed to fall in perpetual darkness, would sing a song of blood and fire again. After losing all their memories and returning to the world from the bonfire, those undead had to explore the world and fight against the terrible monsters born from the dark side. The flame kept burning. The fighting would never end. What's this? Unlike the newbie trial, she clearly felt the reality of the world. If the stone soldiers, the green hippo, and the male fiery dragon were opponents the stars summoned from the nearby regions around the small town, then the dark wave which swept across the world and the undead who were returning to the world from the bonfire were undoubtedly also a part of the world. And White Lotus, as the person who lit the primal fire, was a very special being to the world. So, this is a real world. She vaguely remembered that Mayer had said that the trial world was a dream world the stars helped him link to. However, the current situation told him that it wasn't just as simple as a dream. The dark and the fire, the bonfire and the undead, and the primal fire lit by the witch. She had a feeling that it wasn't the end between the world and himself. It was probably just a beginning. Looking down from the top of the great tower, the place lit by the primal fire, here was just the edge of a vast continent. The dark forest and the great tower were just two infinitely small parts of the world. At a distance, there were majestic mountains and imposing old castles. In the horizon, there was some indiscernible objects that linked the sky and the ground. Little White Lotus. As she eyed the vast area, the fighting between Hua Hua and Red Lotus started again. His strong childhood sweetheart and the perhaps stronger Red Lotus waved their weapons at the same time, running towards Shi, who was gently hugging White Lotus in his arms. Sorry, sister. He's the only one I won't give up to you. White Lotus made a naughty smile towards the resentful Red Lotus and Hua Hua, then used one of her fingers to draw a seal in the air. One person, one city, one heart, one wall. A rhombic wall suddenly appeared in front of Red Lotus and Hua Hua. That was a god's skill. She had once glanced in the seed of the twin witches, Void Seal. However, at that time, a sword appeared in the void, but this time, it was a wall. Boom! A flame 2 times more violent than before blasted. Swish! Swish! Following that was a big crossing sword attack. Hua's two-handed sword bounced off and cracked. One person, one city, one heart, one wall. When it came to attacks, White Lotus was inferior to her sister. However, if we were talking about defense, then she was undoubtedly the best. The twin witches, one used a sword and another one used seals. One was expert in attack and another one was expert in defense. When they teamed up, they had no weakness. Hence, When Red Lotus found that her sister blocked her attack by using the Wall of Heart, she couldn't believe her eyes. Her gentle, graceful, and innocent sister was resisting her. In other words, herself. No, this couldn't be White Lotus's fault. It was all the bastard prince's fault. This damn dream. This cursed world. Little she, be careful. I'm not going to preserve my strength. After seeing White Lotus hugging Yuan-shi, Hua was killing intention rose suddenly and sharply. Burst gauge. Tremendous blood power, far more terrible than the male fiery dragon, burst out from Hua's body. If anyone still claimed that Hua was at third rank now, that person must be blind. Even 1,000 green hippos were nothing when faced with the current Hua. Another skill and power that Yuan-shi didn't know. Hua, how many god skills were you still hiding? Don't worry. We're blessed by the world, my prince. Behold, the glory of the stars is shining on us. White Lotus and Yuan-shi were acting intimately. They hugged each other, reveling in the fairy tale-like atmosphere. Oh, the world was so wonderful, and the flame was so warm here. If this moment could last forever, what a wonderful dream it would be. Oh, the stars are coming. Yuan-shi raised his head. Looking at the tardy lights of the stars, Yuan-shi breathed a sigh of relief. Hua went into her super mode. She broke 3 layers of the Wall of Heart by one hit and rushed towards Yuan-shi. The 3-meter-tall flame spirit turned into a flash of red-hot light and also flew at them with anger. At that very moment, the lights of the stars dropped and covered Yuan-shi. The first formal trial came to an end. I am sorry for the delays this week. Just out back from the hospital about 2 days ago. Been lying in there for a week. Anyways, chapters like usual. Please enjoy. Please check it out our Patreon page. Thank you John Doan for the donation. Queue cleared. Chapter 63. Huge harvest. After returning to the Palace of Stars, Yuan-shi lost himself in the warm, sweet taste of White Lotus's lips. At the last moment when the starlight wrapped Yuan-shi, it looked like White Lotus realized something. She kissed him fiercely and didn't part from him until the last second. After that summer and meeting that big sister, it was the first time that Yuan-shi was at a loss after being kissed. He was so puzzled. Master, you did well. Before Yun-11 returned to the earth, the cute star fairy Mayor kissed him again. In the Palace of Stars, she kept her human form but didn't do anything special that was different from what she did when she was still in her golden, little dog form. She was always so ebullient regardless of where she was and what moment it was. After his face was full of Mayor's saliva, Yuan-shi finally got a free moment to check what he had obtained in the trial. The first were the souls. A great number of souls. Taking the green hippo that Yuan-shi had encountered before as a basic unit, the souls he obtained were about 16 units, which meant that they were equal to 16 hippos. Most of the souls were from the stone soldiers he had killed in the 3rd district. The next were his fighting spoils. Although he couldn't bring them out of the trial world, but the 3rd-rank units Yuan-shi had killed all offered him weapons. The 5 tiger generals offered him 5 refined long lances, and the 3rd-rank stone soldiers on the bridge also offered him a big heap of swords, lances, and halberds. However, his toughest enemy, the archer in red, only offered him a refined longbow, which made Yuan-shi sigh for this strongest archer's poverty. Finally, the most valuable part came. Child Xinyan offered his dark blue 2-handed heavy sword. Unsurprisingly, it was made by the Thunder Army in the Western God's domain, and was obviously more advanced than the sword Yuan-shi obtained in the 1st district. Child Sen Quan offered him his strange fan sword. It was made in Satsuki sword domain and called Spirit Bird Fan Sword. It was a high-level spirit weapon which could be used by a priest, swordsman, and alchemist, and if necessary, its 5 fan blades could combine into one and become a Taoist sword. The last of the last, the famous swords which were handed down from age to age by Child Xinyan's family, the Crane Wing twin swords. They were made the godlike craftsman's successor Oyizi, and had grown into super spirit weapons after thousands of years. The first characteristic of the Crane Wing twin swords, the more talented their owner was, the more power the swords could display. The second characteristic of the Crane Wing twin swords, flying crane wings. When they were forged, They were mixed with some super materials from the Eastern God's domain. They were as light as air and existed side by side. Even if you were a mortal, you could still use it to display some sword skills such as flying sword. The third characteristic of the crane-wing twin swords, the sword spirits. As time went by, 2 sword spirits had been born inside of the twin swords, and only the swordsman who could master his heart could hear the twin swords' voices and master their power. The extra characteristic of the crane-wing twin swords. The twin swords could only be used by a man, but not a woman. The current state of the crane-wing twin swords, a standard godly weapon. It deserved Huahua's favor. Its characterizations had made it above the level of all the other weapons. It was the first godly weapon Yuan-shi had ever seen. The most valuable part was that the godly spirit weapon could even be used by mortals. If it wasn't because Child Yuan-he couldn't display the power of the twin swords fully and was too arrogant, Yuan-shi wouldn't even have gotten through the 3rd district. Other than these weapons, the 3rd district also offered Yuan-shi dozens of green crystal fragments, which could be used to strengthen his weapons. However, what disappointed Yuan-shi was that these green crystal fragments couldn't be used to strengthen the crane-wing twin swords. It seemed that they needed more advanced gem fragments. After obtaining the crane-wing twin swords, Yuan-shi didn't think that he needed any other low-level weapons, and the equipment he obtained this time were all weapons. Therefore, it seemed that he didn't need to use these green crystal fragments temporarily. The last reward was to choose one of the seeds that the stars offered, which was what Yuan-shi was eager for. Unlike the weapons, these seeds could be used to strengthen Yuan-shi himself and provide a high growth rate. Huahua's seed, which Yuan-shi had obtained in the newbie trial, had made his combat power have a great change within a few days. This time, there were 3 seeds waiting for him to pick from. Except for Huahua's seed, they were the strongest 3 seeds Yuan-shi had ever seen. The first seed was from Child Sanquan. Child Sanquan's seed could let him master Taoist skills, alchemy, 5-animal sword skill, and a skill called quick thinking, which allowed him to think 3 times faster than ordinary people. It was quite a good seed. Compared to the green hippo's seed, which could only offer him strong power, this seed was more comprehensive, and the skill quick thinking was incredibly strong. If you could think 3 times faster than ordinary people, it was the equivalent of giving you 3 times the usual study time. No wonder that Child Sanquan could learn the knowledge of a priest, chemist, and swordsman at the same time. The difficulty to merge the seed, normal. The affinity of the seed, normal. The predicted merging time, 3 months. It was quite a mediocre seed and could be regarded as a typical representative of 3rd-rank elites. If Yuan-shi was in a situation that needed power immediately, it could be a good choice. The second seed was from the mysterious archer in red. The archer seed was named the Eidolon Archer seed. It specialized in act alone and snipe. It could let its owner master spiral arrow skill, double arrow skill, seeker arrow skill, and shocking arrow skill. Special ability 1, Eagle Eye, which allowed the user to snipe his enemies from 4 miles away by using a tailored longbow. Special ability 2, Hard Eye, which was learned from practice and actual combat and could let the user master the current situation. Even if there was only 1% possibility that could turn the tide in a battle, this ability could let its user grasp that opportunity. Special ability 3, Not Awakened. It was an extremely strong and mysterious ability and could be provoked in some special situation. Bullet Line Godly Weapon. Not Awakened. It is supposed to be a bow, but still unknown. The difficulty to merge the seed, high. The affinity of the seed, excellent. The predicted merging time, 3 years. Whoa, this is terrible. At first, Yuan-shi thought that Child Sanquan's seed was already very great, but if he compared it with this seed, it was just a waste. This was also the first time that Yuan-shi saw 2 in the description of seeds, except for Huahua's seed. If referring to Huahua's power when she fought with Red Lotus in the ultimate tall tower, this archer in red had great potential. However, why did he have excellent affinity with an archery career? It was the first time that he had seen this seed, but the stars told him that he had excellent affinity with it. Finally, Yuan-shi moved his eyes to the last seed, which had made his heart palpitate with excitement. This wasn't the first time that Yuan-shi had seen this seed. However, compared to the last time he had seen it, the description of the seed contained more information this time. It was the seed of the strongest genius in the entire White Lotus sword domain, the Twin Witches, White Lotus and Red Lotus's seed. Chapter 64. Their seeds. She still clearly remembered what he'd seen after the newbie trial from the brief introduction of the Twin Witches' seed. At that time, he hadn't known that they were the Twin Witches, so he had just named their seed the Sleeping Beauty's seed. This seed had 4 skills: vacuum seal, cutting blade, void burst, and the great circulation. Just upon hearing the names, one could understand that they weren't immortal skills. If it wasn't because the stars told Yunshi that it was very hard for him to merge with the seed, which would have taken him at least 100 years, perhaps he wouldn't have held back his desire to choose this strongest seed at that time. However, he had a second chance now, and this time, the information about this seed was way more detailed and terrifying than what he'd seen in the newbie trial. The Twin Witches' seed. Let's see the description of Red Lotus's seed first. Vacuum seal was Red Lotus's sword skill. She was an expert in the sword. With her Red Lotus holy sword, she could cut off mountains and rivers, breaking through clouds and sky. It was a top-killing sword skill. Cutting blade was an attached skill of Red Lotus's holy sword. It could cut off 70% of low-level spirit weapons and 30% of middle-level spirit weapons as easily as it would a piece of cake. Red Lotus's avatar. When Red Lotus was angry, she was blessed by the demon god. She could turn into the form of a Gant demon god. When she was in this condition, she would lose her sanity and attack everyone except her sister. The sealed god weapon, Red Lotus holy sword. No one knew where Red Lotus had obtained it, but it was so powerful that Red Lotus had to seal most of its power. It could be regarded as a standard god weapon. Then, let's see what White Lotus's seed could offer. Void burst. It was White Lotus's defense spell. It could create a wall of heart, which could even withstand the attack of a standard god weapon. It could also be used as an ancillary attack, which meant that it was a powerful secret skill that could be used to defend and attack at the same time. The Great Circulation. White Lotus divined to know the coming future. It could tell her what her enemy, whose power wasn't 3 times stronger than her, would do within 3 seconds. The White Lotus Sanctuary. It was a blessing that only White Lotus could learn. It could dispel all evils and offer the power of heart to the friendly units who were within the range of 10 miles. The standard god weapon, the Ring of Star and Moon. It was blessed by the stars and forged by using White Lotus's blood, containing the breath of the primal fire. The first special talent of the Twin Witches, 2 bodies, 1 heart. They were perfect partners. When they fought together, they didn't have any weaknesses. The second special talent of the Twin Witches. It was an unknown godly talent. When the Twin Witches made concerted efforts, they would show terrible power. The Bloodline Godly Weapon. It was an unknown legacy of White Lotus God's domain and was supposed to have relations with the primary power of the domain itself. The difficulty to merge the seed, extremely high. The affinity of the seed, extremely excellent. The predicted merging time, 50 years. Godong. Yunshi swallowed as he looked at the Twin Witches' seed. It was really a great lure. The merging time reduced from 100 years to 50 years. Although it was still far away from what he could reach, but at least it was a giant leap. Beside, Yunshi knew that the seed's growth speed could be accelerated, and its capacity could be extended. It was like the sky-flying sword, 10% done, what he obtained after choosing Huahua's seed. The more he learnt from their seeds, the more he knew about their potential and power. Should I choose their seed? Apart from Child San Quan's seed, which Yunshi had decided to give up, the Archer in Red seed and the Twin Witches' seed were both great lures for him. After the 2 trials, he had gained some understanding about the 3 seeds he could choose as his last reward. The first seed could improve his power as quick as possible. It was a seed he should choose when he had an urgent need. The second seed contained great potential and unknown growth speed. The third contained the strongest power and the most terrible characteristics. However, he needed time to absorb them. The more powerful the seed was, the longer the time he needed to merge with them. The only way to accelerate the progress was to increase his affinity with the seed. In short, after obtaining the seed, if he wanted to improve his power, He had to increase his affinity with the seed as fast as possible. Well, did this mean? Looking at these seeds and remembering what happened after he obtained the love system of Starchild, she had a strong sense of foreboding. Was the love system of Starchild built to teach him how to fall in love with multiple girls and survive after that? Oh, holy crap. Was that really a thing that could come true? If the truth was exposed, he would definitely have a bloody future. At the least, his terrible childhood sweetheart, Hua Hua, would never just sit there and see such a thing coming to true. Besides, even though he could set White Lotus aside, but Red Lotus really wanted to kill him. Mayor, were the stars going to murder me? After realizing what the seed would bring him, she just wanted to cry out. Why? He was just an ordinary baker in the small town, and his dream was just to marry a girl who was also born in the same town and was willing to spend her life with him. Hua Hua was his childhood sweetheart and his first love, but someday, she would leave that small town. The twin witches were two big shots he would never imagine knowing. He couldn't even dream of having any relations with them in his wildest dream. Master, the stars want you to grow up as fast as possible. What they did were all for your own good. Mayor innocently looked at her master. Wake up the sleeping beauty by kissing her and save the princess from the tall tower. They were both perfect dramas in the star's memory. They surely can improve your ability to love. Again, she felt how deep and special the star's love was. Yeah, wake up the sleeping beauty in the forest. What a romantic story. And save the imprisoned princess from the tall tower. What an exciting exploit. However, he wasn't a prince nor a knight. The green hippo had killed him over 100 times, and the stone soldiers had killed him 315 times. And in the future, he certainly would die far more times than the past. Can I stop taking part in the trials? Why can't the stars just let me live normally and in peace? She forlornly gazed at his star fairy mayor. You can, master. If you don't mind that your ex-girlfriends will catch you and do this sort of things and that sort of things to you. You won't even have a chance to die, and you will have this sort of things and that sort of things done to you by them. Mayor honestly told what he would face if he didn't become strong. I choose the twin witch's seed. She pressed his fingers on the last seed with mixed feelings of grief and indignation. Anyway, he would die. However, if he didn't fear death, he would fear nothing. Therefore, I chose you, the twin witch's seed. Chapter 65. Escape plan. At the very moment she held the twin witch's seed in his hand, overwhelming information poured into his brain. Vacuum seal, the Red Lotus Holy Sword, the Ring of Star and Moon, White Lotus Holy Field. One secret after another, ones which mortals would never know, were being imprinted into Yunshi's soul. Yunshi felt sick and dizzy. This was the price for receiving power far beyond his limit. The stars could help Yunshi merge with the hero rank seed. However, they couldn't help him avoid this pain. Arf! Yunshi knelt down on the ground of the Star Palace as he kept smashing the ground with his two hands. Compared to the pain he had felt when he received Hua Hua's seed, this was so much more intense. Hua Hua's seed contained unlimited potential, however. Her seed had not transcended the mortal rank limit. But the twin witch's seed was the superlative seed amongst all hero rank seeds. Yunshi felt as if there was an immense library trying to be crammed into his brain. The painful truth was that he couldn't stop this process, and as he looked at the immense library, he could only see the books on the bottom shelves. He couldn't even see the books on the upper shelves. All the hero rank skills were marked with the tag sealed. None of the vacuum seal, the great circulation, and the twin witch's special blood talents was an exception. As I expected. I can't use it. Yunshi had expected this. The level of the twin witch's seed was too high for him now. In fact, the seed of the mysterious archer in red was his best choice. And since he needed to improve his combat power as fast as he could, Child Sanquan's seed was also an optimized option. However, he had chosen the twin witch's seed. Why? He needed about 50 years to merge with this seed. It was no fooling matter. Probably, he also chose it because of their past relationship. Yunshi smiled bitterly. The taste of White Lotus's lips still remained on his lips. Without her devotion, enthusiasm, and initiative, he wouldn't have passed through his first formal trial. At the end of his formal trial, she had chosen to be the primary fire that would ignite the dark world. Obviously, she had made some sacrifices. Therefore, choosing the Twin Witch's seed was in recognition of her sacrifice. He didn't think that he would make any further contact with the mysterious Twin Witches. Therefore, this was his gratitude, but also his final link with them. Because soon after this, he would leave here. He would go to other sword domains where no one would know him. He would practice by himself to become stronger as he traveled through worlds. Escape White Lotus Sword Domain. This was Yunshi's final choice after thinking about it again and again. Huahua was going to leave the small town and join the Palace of Sword. She would step on her road to glory. After finishing the Palace of Sword's entrance exam, the Twin Witches would return to the Palace of Sword and were destined to be the Twin Masters of White Lotus Sword Domain. As for him, in order to dodge the unknown apostle who had arrived at Sky Sword God's domain and was searching for him, to leave White Lotus Sword Domain would be his best choice. He counted it again. His savings were able to get Thim through the Stellar Bridge and escape to another sword domain. After that, he would practice and build up his power and earn money at the same time, then use his fastest speed to escape from Sky Sword God's domain. He thought that he would finally be able to find a remote domain where no one would go to look for him. As long as he kept going through the trials, he should be able to become stronger in the future. He still didn't know when would he stop worrying about being found by the apostle. Maybe after hundreds of years? Or after thousands of years? His past experience in the small town, his sweet memories about his childhood sweetheart, Huahua, his encounter with the Twin Witches, the secret room where he had stayed with his sword skill teacher, his secret game with Miley, Elphilis, and Yili. There were too many things he didn't want to lose or forget. He just wanted to be a normal baker, living in peace. However, the coming of the stars and the series of deep trials had let him realize that he would never have these happy days again. He'd better escape from White Lotus Sword Domain before anyone noticed him. Huahua's seed and the Twin Witch's seed, they both would become his precious memories. After he ran away, the two seeds would follow him and help him grow up. He would go today, the day the Palace of Sword exam was being held. At daybreak, he would secretly leave his home, leaving White Lotus Sword Domain. Huahua, goodbye. Red Lotus and White Lotus, goodbye. Miley, Elphilis, and Yili, goodbye. Mayor, are you ready to rove all over the world with me? After merging with the Twin Witch's seed, Yunshi looked at Mayor with guilt in his eyes. It looked like the Star Fairy had to roam all over with them, although it just came to the world not long ago. As long as I can stay with you, everywhere is my heaven. Mayor flew around and hummed songs with joy. Thank you, Mayor. At least I still have you. It was really wonderful to have the stars send you to me. After checking the rewards he had obtained from the trial, Yunshi resolutely left the Palace of Stars. He would start a new life. He would leave his hometown, parents, and his small bake shop, going to unknown distant worlds. He had made this decision after he finished his newbie trial and practiced in the valley. He needed to kill more monsters like the green hippo in order to obtain more seeds. He needed to constantly keep getting stronger and walking straight on his own road. The deeper the star's love was, the harder the road he would step on would be. Puff! Yunshi opened his eyes and saw the familiar ceiling. However, he felt that something strange was lying down on his body. Was it his illusion? Yunshi lowered his head, then saw his familiar childhood sweetheart. The girl had a lively ponytail, soft and healthy petite body. She was in a really deep sleep. She didn't even know that her saliva had drooled onto her beautiful face. That was his childhood sweetheart, the most unique girl in the world, Huahua. Why was Huahua on his bed and lying down on his chest? For a moment, Yunshi's mind turned into a blank sheet. Oh, no. Kill you, bitches. Huahua was still immersed herself in her dream and didn't notice that Yunshi had woken up. From her angry, unrelenting expression, she was having a very bad nightmare. Huahua! Yunshi couldn't stop the beads of sweat from dropping down from his forehead. Before he began his escape plan, he already faced a massive barrier. Chapter 66. The fight has yet to begin. Already fleeing, why was Hua Hua in his room and lying down on his chest? Did that mean when they were in the trial, they actually stayed in the same bed and kept such a pose all night? Looking at his childhood sweetheart's sleeping face, Yuanxi was at a loss. Dawn was drawing nearer. The first ray of sunshine had entered through a crack in the window and shone on Hua Hua's delicate face. The 16-year-old Hua Hua was so lovely, youthful, and adorable. She practiced hard every day, but that didn't mar her skin even a tiny bit. She was still full of vitality. In another 2 years, she would grow up to be a wonderful beauty. Even now, she was already one of the most beautiful girls in the small town. At this moment, she was lying down on his chest. She looked like a sleeping kitten, clever and lovely. No one would imagine that she was a strong girl who could brandish a two-handed sword and kill a fiery male dragon with great ease. Obviously, she was still a mortal, but she could defeat the male fiery dragon and fight against the future master of White Lotus Sword Domain. In the end, how many abilities was she still hiding? Hua Hua. Yuanxi stretched out his hand and stroked Hua's hair. For a moment, he was at a loss. Rage powers. His touch was like opening a switch. Instantly, Hua Hua woke up. The next moment, an invisible windstorm swept through Yuanxi's room. Hua Hua's rage powers burst out, impacting the room and making a mess of everything. Ah, little she. Hua Hua hadn't completely woken up yet. She confusedly looked at Yuanxi for a moment, then pulled him up. I'll protect you. None of those bastards can lay a finger on you. You are my little she. No one can take you away from me. Yuanxi's back was drenched in a cold sweat. He pretended he knew nothing, then asked her, Hua Hua, did you have a nightmare? Nightmare. Dream. Hua Hua frowned tightly. She looked around the room, then suddenly realized something. Dream. Yes? Was it a dream? Of course it was just a dream. Little she, you were not being kissed and taken away by those bitches. You went somewhere else and I couldn't find you. Hua Hua, I didn't go anywhere. Look, I was just sleeping in my room. Yuanxi pretended that he was innocent and asked back, but you? Why did you come to my room? Your room. Right. Here is. Hua Hua gasped for air and rubbed her temple. Strange. That was strange. Just now, she was still fighting against those bitches who were going to take away her Yuanxi. Those bitches were very strong. So she had to arouse all her latent power and use the unique skill that she was told she should never use in front of others. Even so, she still couldn't beat them and had to end the fight, neither in victory nor defeat. As a result, when she woke up, she suddenly found out that everything was just a dream? Was it really just a dream? Then why was her heart in so much pain? Why did she still feel as if her most precious treasure had been snatched away? Hua Hua, did you have a nightmare? Yuanxi asked his childhood sweetheart again, emphasizing that everything was just a dream. The Trial of the Stars was in an unknown dream world which had a totally different timeline and world rules from the real world. Otherwise, how was it possible that humans could revive inside a bonfire? Everything was just the stars' test. It was a nightmare, but not completely. In fact, the first half of the dream was good. Hua Hua fell into her sweet memories. She wanted to keep everything she could still remember firmly within her mind before she completely forgot the memories. Have a date with little she, slay the dragon together little she, and kiss with little she. Naha. Why are my memories constantly becoming hazy? Details. Remember the details? If only the first part of the dream had happened, it would be the perfect sweet dream. Why was the dream continuing on like that? Some bitches wanted to take away her little she, and she could only watch that happen. How could she endure such a thing? She would never tolerate such a thing. Little she, was it really just a dream? Hua Hua sniffed all over Yuanxi's body, but only smelt Mayer's smell. Okay, her little she was only stolen in her dream, not in the real world. Yuanxi was still the boy she knew. Her childhood sweetheart had only the little dog's smell on his body. Very good, little she. You haven't been stolen. Hua Hua patted her small chest. Her expression made her look like a survivor of a great disaster. Yuanxi looked away with guilt. According to the plan, he should have left town during the last darkness before the coming of dawn. He had written a lot of letters. The letter he would send to his parents, the letter he would send to Hua, and the letters he would send to Miley, Elphilis, and Yili. However, changes occurred faster than he could implement his plan. Before he had sent the letters, his childhood sweetheart had sneaked into his room. Had she had a premonition of his plan? Otherwise, why had she come to his room? Little she, I have made a decision. Hua walked in circles around Yunshi's room, then finally made up her mind. She herself didn't know the reason, but from a few days ago she had felt distracted. Perhaps it was because she hadn't eaten Yunshi's special bread for a period of time. These past few days, she had come to check Yunshi's room several times, but hadn't seen Yunshi even once. Finally, last night, she had caught Yunshi in his room. She felt that she couldn't just sit by idly and remain indifferent. In order to protect her little she, to see him grow up healthily and smoothly, and for the most important reason, to keep Yunshi away from those bitches in her dream, she must make him reborn. What have you decided? Yunshi had a terrible foreboding. Yunshi knew his childhood sweetheart better than anyone. She was a super genius who was afraid of nothing. Even if she faced a fiery male dragon, she would tear it to pieces if it blocked her way. As a genius, nobody could guess her thoughts. Little she, come to the Sword Palace together with me. I will let you become my maid so that I can protect you. Hua's bright eyes gazed at Yunshi, declaring the end of his escape plan. Go to the Sword Palace together with you as your maid? Yunshi looked at his childhood sweetheart in open-mouthed incredulity. What kind of brain could make such a conclusion and plan? Well, little she, you're still too weak right now. But fortunately, I have the legacy of Great Sword Maid. I think it's very suitable for you, Hua said with a serious face, although Yunshi still thought that she was just talking nonsense. Great Sword Maid? What's that? Well, this matter is settled, so no more arguments. Little she, let me make you stronger. I swear I won't let any bitches get you. Rest assured. The power of this legacy is absolutely beyond your imagination. You can practice it even after you reach the 7th rank. This is one of the highest maid-type legacies of the Western Gods domain. Chapter 67. The Great Sword Maid. Little she, you don't know how powerful the maid legacy is. Even I, when I was a child, was once tempted to inherit one of the best maid legacies. If you haven't awakened your talent, I can't even let you inherit it. Little she, you have reached the 2nd rank? Why so soon? Did you go to practice the limitation training? She looked helpless and lifeless. His childhood sweetheart pulled him running at full speed on the street, and he didn't even have any guts to resist her a bit. All the people who saw this scene showed soft and kind smiles on their faces. Little she, little Hua, you really get along well with each other. Hua, when will you and Yunshi get married? You are really a lover's couple made in heaven. Sigh. Yunshi couldn't tell them the truth, he just couldn't say it. Looking at the uncles and aunts who cared about them, Yunshi didn't know how to tell them the truth that he was being kidnapped by his childhood sweetheart. Boom. Hua pulled Yunshi into her home, then kicked the door open, rushing into the front yard. I remember it was buried here. Humph. Papa tried to cheat me into choosing this great sword maid legacy, but he didn't expect that I had found out his intent from a long time ago. Hua made a few turns around the 3rd willow in the courtyard, then decisively waved her fist and punched the ground. Boom. As the sand and the dust blew up into the air, a dark box appeared near Hua's feet. It looked like the box had been specially treated and was buried at the bottom of the willow root. Since it was buried so stealthily, Hua, how did you find it so easily? This is... She looked at this seemingly normal thick box, having an ominous foreboding in his heart. Well, little she, come here. Hua smiled with satisfaction. She pulled Yunshi and ran towards her room. Poor Yunshi didn't even have a chance to resist her and was pulled into his childhood sweetheart's room. In Hua's room, Yunshi hadn't entered Hua's room for a long time. However, he still felt that Hua's room was really incredible, just as he used to feel when he was a kid. Swords. One row after another, swords. From assassin's sleeve daggers to standard two-handed swords, Huahua's room was full of all sorts of swords. In his childhood, he had thought that they were just decorations. However, after he saw Huahua slay the dragon, he had realized that they were all real weapons. Actually, this room was the largest and the most powerful arsenal in town. I remember that there is a special way to open the box. Huahua put the heavy box onto the table, then glanced at the swords. She took down a sword from the wall which was about 1 meter long with a blue-colored sword handle and a shining light gold-colored sword blade. The sword was engraved with a series of ancient and mysterious runes on its blade. Its handle was decorated with a floriated blue cross. At the crisscrossed part of the sword handle and the sword blade, there was a valuable ruby inlaid into the center. The person who holds this sword will be an immortal king. The person who holds this sword must not break the knight's precepts. I will fight for justice. Huahua read the runic letters on the sword blade, then gently sliced her finger with the sword. In the name of my sky-flying bloodline, I witness this oath. The bright red blood flowed out from the wound and flowed along Huahua's fingers, dropping onto the sacred steel sword blade. Instantly, holy golden light spread out quickly from the sword blade. Cut open the steel. Huahua activated the sword, then resolutely brandished the sword, chopping the sealed black box. The black box issued out a horrible scream. At that moment, it looked like a living being trying to escape away from the sacred steel sword. It's no use. You're dead. Huahua coldly brandished the sword again. This time, the black box was cut into 2 pieces from its middle part. A gorgeous maid's black uniform drifted down from the broken black box, then was suspended in midair. Anyone could see that this maid's black uniform was unusual. She even felt terrible bloodlust from the maid's uniform. Oh, is it the legendary killing princess's maid uniform? Huahua was also shocked after she saw the maid's uniform. Killing princess? She felt his back grow cold. His sense of foreboding was growing stronger and stronger. Well, in history, the killing princess was one of the top 3 great sword maids. In her time, she was the most powerful great sword maid without any rivals. Although it's said that she is one of the top 3 great sword maids, however, the 3 maids didn't live in the same period. Therefore, many people think that she is actually the strongest sword maid. The sword skill she was good at was a dark-type sword skill was called infinite killing, and this sword skill was famous due to its 2 properties, high speed movement and fatal hit. She was an expert at killing. I am afraid that the demons she killed were even more than the total population of the whole Sky Sword God's domain. If it wasn't because the other 2 maids had an extraordinary military record on many battlefields, she would have been recognized as the number 1 great sword maid. Before she became a great sword maid, she was an exiled princess whose country had been occupied by demons. After she became a great sword maid, she killed almost all the demons in her country. It's said that at that time, the moon was dyed red due to too many deaths. The more details Huahua spoke of, the more surprised she felt about this gorgeous maid's black uniform. Huahua, where did you get this terrible legacy? The exiled princess, the killing maid, the maid's deep black uniform, the legacy of a great sword maid. Even in the entire Sky Sword God's domain, the maid's uniform legacy was a high-level treasure. Why was this kind of thing buried under the willow tree of your house? She still remembered that the willow tree had been planted by Huahua and him when they were young. Well, very well. Although it's not the number 1 maid's uniform Auroral Morningstar, nor the number 2 maid's uniform Divine Shield, but this number 3 maid's uniform Killing Princess is fine too. Moreover, this maid's black uniform is recognized as the most beautiful uniform amongst all the great sword maids' legacies. Little Shi, you're so lucky. Huahua needed the maid's uniform and smiled at Shi. Wait a minute, I don't feel lucky at all. The killing princess and the great sword maids, weren't they all female? Shi never thought that someday he would be forced to wear a dress. Huahua, what the hell was your brain thinking up? Don't worry about the size. I heard that the size of great sword maid's uniform could be adjusted automatically according to the figure of the user. Besides, it seems like the killing princess was a flat-chested girl. You won't even have to make a lot of adjustments to get into the dress. Hua Hua held the gorgeous maid's black uniform in her hands, approaching Yuanxi step by step. Chapter 68. The Killing Princess. No, no, Hua Hua. Yuanxi still resisted. He didn't want to put on such a shameful maid's uniform at all. Little Shi, don't worry, because you will soon get used to wearing it. Didn't we often play the game Playhouse when we were children? At that time, you had worn my wedding dress, which I had specially ordered from Western God's domain for you. Hua Hua said with a happy expression. If she dressed her childhood sweetheart up as a girl, in that case, none of those bitches would notice him. Besides, Yuanxi was really cute when he wore dresses. One stone and two birds. What a wonderful plan it was. No, don't mention it. Speaking of that experience, Yuanxi didn't even want to remember a bit of it. At that time, he had been too young and naive, and Hua Hua had often cheated him into doing many shameful things. When he was a child, the townspeople had even selected him as the cutest girl suitable for wearing a wedding dress. That was his most painful dark history. Yuanxi had tried his best to forget it. If Hua Hua hadn't mentioned it, Yuanxi would absolutely not have recalled that dark history again. Well, everything is ready. Little Shi, are you ready to put on the Killing Princess's battle dress? It is made of precious clothes and could offer both great attack power and defense. Besides, it can even repair itself automatically. Only the selected greatsword maid can equip this sacred armor. Even in the whole history of greatsword maids, this maid's black uniform was the most powerful and unique battle dress. Hua Hua didn't give Yuanxi any chance to escape. She cut her finger again. Her red blood fell down, dropping onto the Killing Princess's battle dress. Hua Hua recited the oath to start the inheritance ceremony. In the past, in the Great Land, there were many girls fighting for their countries and worlds. They offered their lives as a sacrifice, merging with the ancient monster, forging the most powerful greatswords. They swore to the old gods. They stepped onto the battlefield. They were beloved by God. They were God's messengers. They sacrificed themselves to fight. They were so powerful and beautiful. Therefore, they were called great sword maids by people. In the name of my sky-flying bloodline, I witnessed the Killing Princess's inheritance ceremony. No. Yuanxi wanted to cry out as he saw the maid's uniform flying to him, having an extremely bad feeling in his heart. The maid's black uniform was originally emanating an evil feeling. However, at this time, the evil feeling had disappeared. The uniform turned into countless black silk threads emitting golden light. Then it wrapped Yuanxi's whole body. Gender verifying, pass-through. Talent verifying, pass-through. Adaptability with dark-type power, pass-through. Thou, behold. Yuanxi uncontrollably raised his head and saw a big reddish-black sword. When you look long into the killing itself, the killing looks into you. The center of the sword was hollowed out. A disturbing bloody scent was flowing out from there. The sword blade had an awful black serrated shape, and the handle of the sword was studded with a red gem that was large as a fist. In addition to it, there were 8 small rhombic gems surrounding this gem, which shone with strange but also splendid lights. The name of the sword, Killing Princess. Up until the last holder's death, it had killed 135,610,000 living beings, and was named as Killing Princess. It's the most ferocious demon sword amongst all the great swords forged for made of claymore. The person who inherits this sword slaughter countless beings. That's the price for obtaining this power. Strange. Yuanxi smoothly passed through the Killing Princess's inheritance ceremony. However, Hua Hua showed an unbelievable look on her face. Why could Yuanxi pass through the Killing Princess's inheritance ceremony so simply? At first, she was going to use her sky-flying bloodline to force the Killing Princess's dress to accept Yuanxi. After all, Yuni was a boy. It was impossible that the Great Sword Maid's legacy would recognize him so easily. Great Sword Maid. As the name suggested, only a girl who proved her purity, loyalty, and self-dedication could undertake this career. No, I don't accept it. As if seeing his worst nightmare about to come true, Yuanxi decisively rejected the killing princess's legacy. Unfortunately, it was too late. The inheritance ceremony is completed. As one of the strongest greatsword-made legacies, the killing princess's dress and her magic sword were seemingly very pleased with Yuanxi. They ignored his words and directly finished the last step. Countless black silk threads surrounded Yuanxi, then instantly dismantled his shabby clothes. At the same time, it began to adjust its own size. Whoa! Wow, wow, wow! Hua covered her eyes with her two hands, then opened her eyes wide, peeping at Yuanxi through her fingers. Finally, Hua saw a pretty girl standing in front of her. Even though she knew the girl was Yuanxi, she still couldn't believe that the beautiful girl was her childhood sweetheart. The girl was wearing a gorgeous black ceremonial dress. The ceremonial dress was so beautiful and as astonishing as a princess's dress, which was far beyond the concept of a common maid outfit. Her hair was black. Her delicate skin looked like first-rate silk. Her appearance and behavior were luminous with a kind of gentle grace. Due to nervousness and embarrassment, her lovely face looked so cute as if she was an angel emerging from a painting. Even her chest, which at first was certainly flat like nothing, was also uplifted a bit, as if it was a tradition from the previous killing princess. For gold-red gems were studded on her slender waist, then matched with the rosette upon her bosom and the ribbons beside her waist. If she wasn't wearing the lace headdress, no one would connect the ceremonial dress with a maid's. What was even more amazing was that the dress could perfectly enhance her temperament and appearance. At least, when Yuanxi surprisingly gazed at his black gloves and the absolute field between the black silk stockings and the corner of his skirt, he wondered how it was possible that this was his body. The smooth, tender, snow-white skin. Who was this person? No, it was a foul, it was a lie. Yuanxi could affirm that he himself had never had such snow-white, flawless skin before. Not only his skin, but even his bones and height seemed to have been modified, so that his body ratio looked more perfect. The killing princess dress was like a magic pin, completely hiding Yuanxi's masculinity, leaving only a dazzling, enchanted, gorgeous, and perfect young girl in the world, black and white intertwined, weaving a new Yuanxi who Hua had never seen before. Now, even Hua herself was fascinated by Yuanxi's appearance. Oh, her Yuanxi sure was suitable for women's dresses. She didn't need to worry about anything now. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.